It's 1-1. There's only one game difference, and already Brazil leading this match. So a victory is really going to shunt Sweden down or Brazil down, and then push the other one up to start chasing India and potentially Bulgaria in the long run.
As you said before, Brazil started the series with 2 wins. Even if they lose the rest of their games, they've still got 2 extra points in the game record.
Yeah.
So it's not a complete disaster for them. Still in with a good shot to get through. Everyone is in with a good shot to get through to the next phase in the Hearthstone Global Games, really until they get down to 3 losses anyway. That's where they're in. They have to kind of sweat a little bit. It gets dicey. Still possible to get, but unlike when the teams have 3 wins, it's pretty much a guarantee that they're through to the.
Yeah, and as we just looked at the group, then you can see that, you know, the way the spots work out, Bulgaria in a very good place, and the difference between, you know, first place and third place in the group might not seem like a lot because all 3 teams will qualify out of each in stage 2. If you qualify first seed in first place, it means that you will be put into a stage 2 of teams that got second, for example. So you effectively have on paper an easier group if you qualify higher. So even though we're saying, oh, you know, you get a few wins, you'll be through top 3, potentially third. If you can get first or second, that dramatically improves your chances in stage 2 of this tournament. So even towards the back few weeks of stage 1, we're in 6 now. As we get to weeks 9 and 10, even the matches between, say, first place, second place, or even first place, last place, second place, last place, are important because if second place gets a win, pushes them into first place, the seeding's going to be so much better for them moving into stage 2 of groups are smaller as well.
Yeah.
So it's not like, oh, I'll only have 2 other first place teams instead of 3. It's like, no, actually, there'll be probably 2 second place teams, 2 third place teams, so on like that, you know, to build the group. So
while we're kind of in the stage at the moment, or the part of stage 1 where the groups really are taking shape, it's not going to get any less intense than this, not ever, because we're going to end up with the games, with the real decider games, where we'll get to the point, especially towards week 9 and week 10, where if you win this game, you're through. If you lose this game, you're out. But also, the games between the players that are already through, like already 3 wins, all of their games will count too, because it will help them out in the following group, as you said before, if they win.
Yeah, and just so you're aware, you're not sat staring at our faces just for the fun of it. Show is actually just getting his game ready. He's just sorting himself out, getting ready for the game. So we're just waiting until he is ready to start and go into the match. So you stuck with us for a little bit longer.
That doesn't matter. Don't feel need to justify it. Twitch chat love it. They love it.
Do they?
They love a good bit of Talkstone, right?
Well, all I'm saying is, as soon as, you know, show's ready and prepped to go into this game, we will go into it. You are not missing anything. You are not. You know, there's no unneeded stalling, for example. We're ready to cover the game as soon as you guys are, and we'll keep you informed as to when that's going to be.
Well, they're ready. They're ready to watch. Yeah. I'm ready to watch.
I'm ready. I want to see what happens. I think Brazil can take it, to be honest.
Yeah?
I'm pretty confident.
Well, it's been a good day for that. I know I keep hammering this home, and you said that maybe Brazil aren't quite as much the underdogs as we've been saying they are. But all day today, there's been better-known team versus worse-known team. And even before today, even yesterday, Austria versus Russia. Austria won. And first game today, the lesser-known team won. Second game, third game, and now lesser-known team, Brazil, now has the strongest start.
I think Brazil were fine going into this match. And I'm pretty sure
I never said worse, I said lesser-known. Different.
I think as well, I might be wrong on this, I'm sure she'll correct me, but I think Cora, our American partners over there who are going to be casting global games on a Thursday for you guys, I think Cora picked Brazil.
I think you're right, yeah.
So she'll be probably watching this match with a lot of interest. Very happy to see Brazil take an early lead. Probably want this game to continue to be speeded.
She wants to come on tomorrow and gloat about how her team is doing well, just like mine is.
And mine.
Yeah.
Everyone's picked us. What did Rob pick? Rob picked Canada.
Hey. Wow, yeah, and Soto picked
We're
Russia.
really good at this.
The only person I'm not sure about is Lorinda. I'm not sure which teams he picked. I remember him saying that he's picked 2. I just don't remember which the 2
One of Lorinda's teams was Philippines? Either
Philippines
or Malaysia, I want to say.
He's a cheat anyway for picking 2.
That's true. Malaysia are doing extremely well. They're 3-0 in their group, I believe, at the moment, so they're doing absolutely awesome. Great to see those guys performing. But yeah, I'm not sure where Philippines 1-2 off the top of my head. I want to say so.
Yeah, that sounds about right. I'm not going to say that.
With me, right?
Not going to say
You're
that
just
with
like, yeah,
complete
that's
certainty.
okay.
I don't have anywhere in my notes right now what the Philippines was. But I've just received word that the game is about to begin, so don't worry, don't start tuning out, don't get too bored of us, because we're still going to be here commentating over the gameplay any moment now.
Yeah. But it's a shame for you guys, as you'll have to watch Hearthstone instead of our lovely faces. But it looks like we are going to be getting into it. Show has said he is ready. So the teams are going to be going into it very, very soon indeed. It's going to be Brazil versus Sweden. Brazil 2-1 up currently. So Show, took his time getting ready. I hope it was worth it, because he has to win this game or Brazil take the series.
And we established that it's going to be Pirate Warrior or Quest Warrior versus Jade Druid or Aggro Druid.
We established it's going to be Warrior versus
one of
Druid.
the playable
Good
archetypes. But the important thing here that we also said is that most of the Druid decks seem to be favored against most of the Warrior decks. So Show should be in with a good chance here.
Yeah, but Show also a bit of a master warrior to a large extent. Control Warrior has in the past been his signature deck. He played a lot and popularized Taunt Warrior, I think, first, or very quickly at least, since Standard came out. And Show probably just lied to us as we've not started the game yet. So now he's wondering, what should I play? It's like, no, Show, you've picked. We can see
in
Druid.
the Druids. You don't have much of a choice here.
Yeah.
It can be stressful, preparing for a game of Hearthstone.
It's stressful waiting for Show.
It is stressful.
His viewers on his stream must be this must be the start of his stream every time, right, guys? Starting the stream 20 minutes later, he actually comes on camera.
When will Show?
Wow.
It's gotten
getting as far as Sol.
It's gotten to that point. We've been waiting for this next game. I'm making like Lorinda jokes here. Well, do you think Sol?
I feel like I need to just walk away. But
don't walk away just yet, because we have Quest Warrior versus Token Druid.
There we go. We are finally in Lots of Dantes. Probably just went for a nice meal somewhere in the wait for Show to get ready. But it's going to be, as you said, the Quest Warrior plus the Aggro Druid double Hungry Crab tech we've talked about for a lot of players are bringing for playoffs.
Yeah.
But just in general, just sniping a Murloc doesn't have to be Paladin. Could be the Mirror. Also, it could be a deck that I can't think about now that has Murlocs in it. But yeah, Hungry Crab doing it pretty well in general.
Rogue, Quest Rogue.
That was it.
Bile Fin.
Yeah, Rogue. Yeah. That was it. Yep. There was definitely something I was missing. Innovate, but not.
Oh no, I don't know. This is looking okay. If Show can just pick up another one drop, then turn one.
Well, that's it. This is not enough minions, right?
Yeah.
Mark of the Lotus is great. But you definitely need more. Even though the Blood Sail actually pulls patches, of course, you definitely want like one more minion because you've got the Innovate.
Alternatively, your favorite mage card, Vicious Fletchling, could come out here.
It's a good mage card.
Picked up. In fact, a 2-mana minion would be just fine, because Bloodsail, Corsair, Innovate, 2-mana minion, coin, Mark of the Lotus would be just fine. Firefly is like a 2-mana minion.
That'll do, Donkey. That'll do.
Arguably the perfect card to pick up here. If Show wants to, he can just go completely wide.
Yeah, he could actually save the coin as well if he really wanted. Or he could do the opposite way. He could play Bloodsail Corsair. Or, hang on, he could play Firefly, then coin out the Flame Elemental.
Oh, not play the
and then not play Corsair. And what this does...
I keep calling it Cultist for some reason.
Just making up thing. The pirate that pulls patches file.
Right,
discuss this. The one that gets patches out of the deck. And what this does is, one, it gives you more options next turn. Mm-hmm. And two, well, the Corsair, although will miss the Mark of the Lotus attack, the patches doesn't. So you still pretty... There's a volcano. So you still pretty much set up.
Volcano's a shaman card, right?
Oh, it's still a volcano. Ooh, okay, now Bloodsail Corsair is going to get even more value because of this Fiery War.
Oh yeah, that's really good. I was going to say I preferred the idea of just splurging your hand onto the board on turn 1. However, you're right. Bloodsail Corsair, getting rid of a Fiery War Axe, summoning a patches, and then getting buffed by Mark of the Lotus. All without the need of an Innovate. That seems good.
Yeah, you effectively lose like 2 damage, but gain an Innovate and the chance to snipe a War Axe, right? So this is the really nice turn here.
Alternatively, Show could decide to Innovate out the War Leader this turn, save Mark of the Lotus for next turn, potentially buffing even more minions. A Fiery War Axe is already gone, so chances are Show could be very rewarded for this.
He's not playing around Dirty Rat on 3 though, playing all his minions.
Well, I mean, even if there's a Dirty Rat here, Show doesn't really care. He just buffs up his guys.
Now he can't swipe.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah, Swipe one of the... I don't really want to call it a tech card, so to speak, but the card
Sometimes
not
you want
in every aggro druid deck. But it is nice to, one, push through some taunt later, where you can just give damage from hand, which is very nice, not require any minions straight away. But also it's just good as almost tempo removal as well. And
This is just getting silly. If Sho wants to, he's got yet another opportunity to create a very wide board and buff everything. The problem is that Ravaging Ghoul is very awkward to trade into. Yeah, he could just trade in with the Murloc War Leader, but then he's trading a 4-3 into a 3-3.
you can just Terra Power, right?
Not if he wants to play Mark of the Lotus as well, he can't. No.
This isn't good enough. If you were going to do that, you were going to just trade the War Leader in anyway.
So, or he might just go face with everything.
Yeah, whatever.
Yeah.
Tis fine.
This is just the dream start for the aggro druids. There needs to be a brawl or something. Got to admit, double Dirty Rat isn't looking so bad for Brazil there.
Yeah, and this was actually a bit weak to sleep with the fishes as well. He would have just left a 2-3 on the board and a 3-1 Ghoul as well. Right. So a little bit weak to sleep with the fishes, but Shoch decides he's going to go for it. But these are the key turns here, and I think that this Stonehill defender could be the deciding factor in this game.
Sure.
If you Stonehill next turn, or the next draw might be good as well. Savage draw, nice pickup in general, but swipe is too tasty here to kills off the Ghoul. But you can see already, Loxodontis has on 19 health, will be 18 with the swipe plus whatever damage goes through. So that'll be an additional, 4 damage goes through?
4, yeah.
So he's under a lot of pressure, but next turn, Stonehill Defender, Dirty Rat again. You're probably pretty confident that there's no minions going to be in hand. Turn after, whatever you draw from Stonehill, or potentially another taunt, you have 2 draws for this. So let's see what gets drawn here. Dagon actually, great minion to follow up.
And Ali Armorsmith, arguably a little bit better, 1 extra health. Attack doesn't matter here, but gaining armor too. Still, 5 mana, 3/6 with taunt, going to potentially soak up all of this damage. However, we can see there's a Savage Roar. It's not clean.
I think I preferred the other 2 minions, to be honest.
Yeah?
Yeah. Oh, it's just Fledgling. Big Bird.
I thought that was a mage card, Raven.
It's a card played in my mage list. It's the best card, other than Glyph.
Heard it here first.
Heard it here first. But yeah, the 2 minions spread the... Well, 1 is just more health. There's an additional plus 4 health on board for any minions to get through. Yes, you could argue that Stonehill Defender only hits for 1, but still, like this, I don't know, this hatchling doesn't feel too great here. I'll take 8 damage.
Yeah, Loxodontis is running out of time to develop a board, to get rid of Sho's board and to actually maybe get some cards.
The only benefit here, to be fair, is Swipe is gone.
Yep.
Oh, 1 Swipe is gone. Now, I just punched my mind. Now 1 Savage Roar is gone.
Yep.
So there just can't be that much more left in the tank, right? Especially with just 1 card in hand.
But Vicious Fledgling is there, and it looks like it might get some value this game, depending on how Loxodontis decides to play this turn. Fledgling comes out, it's not quite got a clear path to the face just yet.
Yeah, Armorsmith's going to be nice. Armorsmith plus Hero Power. I feel like Hero Power is something that Loxodontis has to press every turn now, unless the board is completely clear and he's already at that safe health.
The Power of the Wild now would be insane. Savage Roar! That's enough! If the Fledgling could get Wind Fury, and then it would be enough.
Yeah, so let's look at this. So it's 1 minion plus face to kill the Dirty Rat.
Yeah.
That's plus 2 armor. So that's what, 6, 8, 10.
Oh, it is enough.
Then it's going to be 5 and 5, yeah. Game!
4 and 5, yeah.
Sorry, 4 and 5.
Yeah. Doesn't even need the Wind Fury. That was disgusting. Similar to one of the aggro Paladin games we saw yesterday where...
1 off, right?
Oh, because of the Armorsmith.
Yeah, it is 1 off. So what's the adapt? It is not Wind Fury.
Oh, okay. Slow down, slow down.
I was going to say, I thought I got that right for a second there.
It's the Armorsmith that messed us up there.
Yeah, because there's always going to be 2 attacks going into the Rat, which means there's always plus 2 armor, which pushed him from 8 to 10.
Yeah.
And yeah, only 9 available. Not the best choices here.
1-1 is okay.
I wonder if Untargetable would have ended up being a little bit better there.
Well, if he's not trading, which he's not, then Untargetable would have prevented the execute. That being said, we've already seen 1 execute, so I guess Sho doesn't play around that. Tar Creeper.
2 taunts?
That is 2 taunts! I think +1/+1 was better.
Public Defender, go! I'm joking.
Nah, it's gotta be Tar Lord, right?
Tar-Lord, yeah.
It does mean that Loxodontus won't be able to armor up next turn, but how does Show deal 11 damage? You already used the swipe, and most of these lists only got one swipe, so...
And also, if you could stabilize behind Tar-Lord, you're like 2 hero powers away from being safe from swipe, right? You know what I mean?
And Armor Smith's still there.
Yeah, you can get out of it very, very quickly indeed. This is a huge pick here. I think it has to be Tar-Lord unless you're so convinced you're going to draw into a better plan. But Public Defender is very marginally better than Tar Creeper. What Public Defender does is probably gain you more armor from the Armor Smith.
Yeah, that's true.
Because with this, your minions aren't necessarily... Your minions aren't dead on board anyway, so why not?
Yeah.
Right? You can do the 1 damage, so regardless of what this Flame Elemental trades into, he's going to die this turn. What is this draw? Mark of Yashara.
That's not bad. It's a 3-card draw, and you buff up the Fledgling Smith strong enough to hit that Tar Creeper in 1 hit. And Living Mana from this could actually flip the game back on its head one more time. That being said, that Tar Lord is going to do so much work as your namesake card gets drawn off the top there, but it's not going to do anything.
And for those of you who don't know, Vicious Fledgling only gets the adapt choice if it hits face.
It would be a little bit silly if it got the adapt from trading as well.
Already good enough, guys, that I'm playing it in Mage. So
you should be too, according to Raven.
I'm just saying.
Now you'll prove yourself right.
So now you imagine the Fledgling is going to trade into the Tar Creeper, but then it still leaves the Stonehill, and the second you start getting 1 taunt ahead, if that makes sense, of the minions being cleared behind an Armor Smith, it's the second you're feeling pretty good about life here, and you can even see just a bit of a smile here for Loxodontis. It's just like, you know what? I can do this.
Right.
Because he's already saying, like, look, that isn't enough damage, but there's no choice from Show but to try and hit through this. You can't be like, well, it's got Armor Smith down, I'm not going to swing. You have to.
Loxodontis with 1 health and 3 armor. Ali Armor Smith looking a little bit better than the Tar Lord here, just because he needs to play it and also hero power, then start gaining armor at an alarming rate. Then again, Fletchling gets past it very, very quickly.
I think I like the Tar-Lord this turn because it kills the Fletchling. It kills it.
There was an oversight there. 6-3 plus hero power does trade pretty well into it. 2-7.
I'm not going to help, mate. Still only 10. You can kill the Tar-Lord this turn, but that gains 3 armor and loses you your whole board. The Armor Smith is still alive, and there are more taunts where that came from.
Getting rid of the Tar-Lord here does set you up for a great Living Mana pickup off the top there. Unfortunately, Ali Armor Smith will see to that preemptively.
Yep, but you have to. I think you have to go into Tar-Lord. Are you going to get any more turns in this game where Tar-Lord is killable? Wow, he's not going to.
Loxodontus just put both of his arms in the air there.
I think he knows he's won. I think he knows he's won, to be completely honest.
Whirlwind, that's just more armor.
Well, Whirlwind did trade into the Raven if he really wanted to, but he doesn't need to.
Why not, though? You gain so much armor. That way you put the...
But the Armor Smith dies, that's why.
Yeah, but so does the Fledgling. Usually.
Oh, no, you can trade in with the Tar Creeper, right? If you Whirlwind...
Oh, Whirlwind, trade both minions in? Sure.
You can Whirlwind Tar Creeper. I was thinking just leave the Fletchling. You don't care.
Yeah. That's
so
what
you Whirlwind Tar Lord, into the Raven. Keeps the Armor Smith on 1. And keeps it gaining armor, then you can just play the Ali Armor Smith behind that, and you can still armor up. I do like isolating minions on the board against Druid, though. You're not going to kill him in the long game, so you just create more minions on your side of the board than his, and they're never going to be able to punch through them.
So few cards in Loxodontus' hand.
This is nice.
So many decisions he can make. Whirlwind, then play the Ali Armor Smith. Fletchling not going to get a value trade. Also, the quest's complete if that's actually relevant, which I don't think it is.
Well, you need to finish the game, but I do think the fair few next turns are going to be armor up.
Yeah, if you play the Sulfurous next turn and then get met by a Living Mana and your hero power's only dealing 1 at a time, that's probably no good.
It's not a bad pickup.
It's not. Fletchling is once again able to value trade away the Ali Armor Smith, though that 1 attack will gain Loxodontus 3 armor.
And that's what I was meaning. You're going to gain so much armor behind this board, you can afford to Sulfurous. Because 1, you can use it to trade minions, and 2, 8 damage a turn. And there's no minions in hand, there's nothing in hand for Brazil. So I believe the Sulfurous, unless there's let's say a concede from Sweden, I believe the Sulfurous will get equipped this turn.
You're Loxodontus clapping there.
Yeah, he's happy, he survived on 1. I'd clap.
It's a good feeling. Pretty bad feeling for Show, though.
Yeah. You got Show close.
Oh, that's worse than mine. Actually, it's better than mine. It's better than mine. Credit where it's due.
Thank you. Next draw, Ghoul. Not probably what the worst card in the day.
From 1 health up to...
No, he's going to equip it, yeah.
Well, still
He's
1
on
health
19.
and 20 armor. Oh, no. Oh, right, yeah. 18 armor.
19.
So,
There you go.
19
18 plus 1 pal.
Thank you.
There you go.
I was trying to point out, like, he's still gripping onto life with his bare hands, but the armor just protecting him.
Yeah. Well, he's safe, right? Any minions that come down now, he has the weapon to trade, he has the armor smith, has the tar lord, has the ghoul, and he's still just gonna chip away with that hero power. Locks at Dante's. I can only imagine the volume of those shouts that are going on in their team
Rip
communication for
headphone
Brazil.
users is the phrase that comes to mind.
And I don't blame him at all. Absolutely huge win there for Brazil. You know, like on 1.
Yeah.
1 health and take the win. Absolutely huge.
Leaving Sweden with 1 win and 2 losses in the Hearthstone Global Games so far. They, I think, more than a lot of other teams, are really going to want to push forwards and prove themselves because their reputation is on the line.
Yeah, we can see the shape of how this matchup went overall. Brazil versus Sweden. Koglorin got the better of Oskaka with the Miracle Rogue versus the Quest Rogue early on.
That was good.
Legolas, Mage versus Priest, just somehow eked out of absolutely nowhere. That is definitely a game to go back and watch because that was nuts. And we saw the second Meteor come out there to clear the Priest up. And then we saw the last couple of games go on then, as we saw the last one. Oh, they were going to get the review anyway, so this is fine. The Miracle Rogue.
With the Tar Creepers completing the quest,
which was definitely weird.
but not doing it quickly enough, as 3-mana minions tend to not do quickly enough. And there you go, it's just the guaranteed lethal, the Razor Petal, the SA7 agent, and the Eviscerate finishing Oskaka off.
Yeah, Koglorin with a super just aggro style with this Miracle Rogue, absolutely the correct way to play versus the Quest Rogue. And now, this blew my mind.
Oh,
this Meteor, this was Meteor number 1, I believe. Was it?
Now,
Yeah,
I'm certain some, not many, but some of these lists are running 2 Meteors because it just, in this
They didn't
matchup.
discover a Meteor, did they?
No, they both are in the deck. And in this matchup, Meteor's just better than Flamestrike.
Yeah, I agree. If you want to take down solo big minions, it's going to win you the game. And here it is. Look at this sequence of turns now. At this point, you're like, okay, Brazil be dead, especially when the Shadow of Death comes up to kill Medivh. But then Arcane Intellect into exactly Meteor number 2.
Yeah. We both saw the Alex Strauss and we're like, yeah, there's no way they come back. There's no time.
Boom.
What? Meteor? Look at the trades. Oh my goodness. Lyra gets traded into perfectly as well. Resetting the board entirely, and the Priest was just out of stuff at that point.
Yeah, Powder did manage to fight back, though, with this incredible Pirate Warrior game. Brazil just not being able to do anything. Patches didn't even die throughout the whole game, and it was summoned on turn 3, I believe. Now turn 6, as you see this play happen. Leroy, though, the setup of exact lethal from Powder, working out in the end. Still had plenty of gas in the tank. Powder, quick smile on the face, he cleans this game up. But I'm pretty sure the smile will fade.
Yeah,
as the last game is going to be a bit rough.
Those outdoor peacekeepers in that game just weren't quite enough to stem the tide of the Pirate Warriors. Now, looked like such a strong start from Show. Got a great Mark of the Lotus, got the Vicious Flesh down, even buffed it with Mark of Viscerage, buffed it by giving it extra 1-1. But it wasn't enough, only putting Loxodontis down to 1 health.
And the Stonehill into Dirty Rat, into more and more taunts, hiding behind that basically MVP Armor Smith, to be completely honest. The swipe already being used earlier meant that was never quite enough. Tarlord, coming from the Discover from the Stonehill, as you can see now, was absolutely huge. Just an immovable object that Show did not have an answer to, and that was the game, and that was the series.
Whew, and take a deep breath, Raven. That was an intense set of games, even though it didn't quite go to the ace match. Felt close all the way through, though Brazil did have a good handle on that game, winning the first 2. Yeah, they lost to the Pirate Warrior, but then they won game number 4. Definitely a great performance from them.
Yeah, everything's super solid from Brazil, and to be honest, after that performance especially, I'm expecting great things from them as we move on throughout the stages into the weeks of Stage 1 of the Hearthstone Global Games. I'm looking forward to seeing what they can do.
We were talking about how they should not have won the Priest Mage game, but they played to their outs perfectly. But, well, one last look at Group A now, and, yeah, Sweden just a little bit lower than Brazil. I believe they've swapped places because Sweden had a slightly better game record before now.
Yeah, but Brazil moving up into that cozy third place spot, but looks even cozier is that first and second place as finish they'll want to get to qualify through groups at a slightly higher stage.
Yeah, third place is... I don't know if cozy is the word that I use. It just takes one more
Cozier than fourth.
It is cozy in the fourth. It's a little bit safer than fourth. Anyways, we have one final game ready for you today. It's going to be Netherlands versus Peru. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back.
You asked for it.
Warrior pick and the Shaman eliminated. So Mage versus Warrior coming up first. And again, if this is, it's basically, this is going to be break by what type of warrior we're looking at. If the warrior is Quest Warrior, then basically any kind of mage you throw into it will be quite favored.
Yeah.
If the warrior is Pirate Warrior, then any type of mage you can throw into it will be fairly unfavored.
That being said, we've seen some impressive performances just today with the mage, with the warrior, the Quest Warrior outlasting the mage. Not needing the quest. They don't need that to win. They just need to press that armor up button a lot, deal with the mage's threats one by one, and eventually, sometimes they can just win the game, not through fatigue in the Hearthstone sense, but through fatigue because the mage runs out of stuff.
That is fair, I think, and that applies, when we saw that happen today, it was with Secret Mage in particular, right? And I think that's where it applies, because Secret Mage is the deck that is, the lightest on value. It's the deck that can actually run out of stuff. Whereas, a Gunther Mage can just continually cycle couriers into more cards, glyphs into more cards, arcane intellect, etc., etc. And actually, when you break it down, if you're going for that, outlast your damage plan with Quest Warrior, Gunther Mage actually has more damage than Freeze Mage when you break it all down.
That's really, really terrifying when you think of it that way, especially as Gunther Mage also has Medivh the Guardian.
It also has
Portal.
10 times more minions than Freeze Mage.
Actual board presence in the late game. It is going to be the Pirate Warrior, though, versus some mage, probably Gunther. As we can see, there's a Polymorph in the hand, and I don't think Polymorph is very common in Secret Mage.
Yeah, Secret Mage is still a deck that's in flux to a sense, where no one's really quite sure whether it should be aggressive tempo deck with Cabal Lackeys, or more similar to the Gunther Mage, or somewhere in between. But yeah, Polymorph and now Meteor seems to be indicating it's towards that slower kind of strategy. But Peru staring down at a hand of double Frothing Berserkers with the coin. There's a pretty tempting keep. That is one of your biggest minions when you're playing up against a deck that can actually do things against your early game, Volcanic Potion, Frostbolt, your minions just having the ping hero power to pick off 1/1s and 2/1s. Frothing Berserker landing early is by far the biggest problem for your opponent, so no surprise to see one being kept here, but that's a Patches.
I was going to say, he wants to maybe throw something away, get a one-drop, but that's not the one-drop that I would have been referring to. Though, I guess it's the play. I don't think you just play nothing this turn, do you? Then again, you just play into a ping.
I think that's fine. I think because second Frothing is now picked up, play Patches, entice the ping, and then go coin Frothing into Frothing is a perfectly reasonable line, because you don't really want to give your opponent free reign here just to develop whatever they want, just slam a 2-3 on the board. The counter argument to that is 1/1 Patches is your 1-drop. If there is an Arcanologist in hand for the Mage for Netherlands, they'll probably just drop the 2-3 into this anyway, so you can't actually get your opponent to ping if they have that 2-3 available.
Luckily for Peru, no Arcanologist to be seen just yet, so we are more than likely just going to see, wow, I think it's the only play really, Frostbolt Patches? No, I don't think so.
Unlikely to Frostbolt the Patches this turn.
And Frostbolt Face doesn't achieve much either just yet. So pinging away the Patches, and as you said now, coin Frothing Berserker into Frothing Berserker. This is going to be hard to keep up with.
Oh, that Patches draw is now so savage because of the South Sea Captain. If that was just a different 1-drop potentially, or if there was just no 1-drop at all, he would just have coin 5/5 worth of stats this turn, 2 of which would have charge. That's just the difference between drawing Patches and it still being in your deck. For Pirate Warrior in particular is just night and day.
I don't think Team Peru care too much though. They've got Frothing Berserker into Frothing Berserker.
They care enormously, Falcone.
I don't think they care at all. Frostbolt is going to put a pause to this Frothing Berserker, but then the second one comes down, and Netherlands aren't going to have any way of dealing with them. They can ping away the first one, sure, but
Yeah, I don't think you Frostbolt this turn because that locks you into a mandatory ping next turn.
Yeah,
and then
true.
what are you doing with your ping next turn? You can't actually develop anything. So I think you just have to drop Courier this turn, see if you can pick up something playable for next turn. If not, then your feasible turn for next turn is just a Frostbolt ping if the Frothing goes face. If it trades, you only need to do half of that. Perhaps you can get away then with developing a second Cabal Courier, depending on what the board state is.
Yep.
But mana efficiency is actually very important at this point.
You were talking earlier about how strong Arcanologist would be for Netherlands earlier, but I think it's also worth noting Mana Worm on turn 1 completely missing. How different would the board be already if the Mana Worm was picked up on turn 1?
Yeah. Shadowbolt is a good pull here, though, for sure. And we'll be able to answer any kind of mid-game threat very, very cleanly. Shadowbolt, pretty clean card against Pirate Warrior. I remember back in the day, the Rat told me some stats that he had about his Reno Warlock that he played against aggressive decks and how he was actually beating them with high 40% consistency, even in games where Reno was not being drawn, or specifically in games where Reno was not being drawn. And it's because of how efficient things like Shadowbolt are against some of these mid-game aggressive minions. You know, Frothing Berserkers, South Sea Captains, Cultists, Korkron Elites even. You know, the amount of things that it answers very nicely is long and arduous.
Deal 4 damage against a 4/4 does seem good. The only problem with Netherlands' turn here is that they're not quite able to squeeze in the Frostbolt as well just yet, meaning regardless of what their decision is now, one of these Frothing Berserkers will be left alive to deal 5 or more damage.
Yeah, this turn is super awkward again, still on just the mana efficiency issue. I mean, Frostbolt ping on the 4/4 Frothing is just a nightmare because then you're left with a 6/2 smashing you in the face the next turn, which, you know, maybe in some worlds you'd be willing to suck that up and say, okay, I'll deal with it. I'll deal with taking that damage once, then next turn I have a clear, but then your follow-up turn is Shadowbolt Arcanologist to clear out the 6/2, which, yeah, it's mana efficient, it's a decent turn 5, but in the meantime, your opponent's going to have developed possibly 1 or 2 extra minions behind that. You're just going to be behind the play the entire time.
Yeah, I mean, dealing with the Frothing with more health, with the Frostbolt, just seems impractical when you've got a Shadowbolt in hand that can perfectly and cleanly deal with the other one anyway.
Right.
I don't mind this play at all. I doubt that Crew ever trade this either. They want another Fiery War Axe right now. They want to just smack that and go face with a 6-attack Frothing. Unfortunately, it's not going to happen. Heroic Strike feels like a bit of a waste here, though, and also very mana inefficient.
Yeah, it's one of those irritating turns where you curse the fact that Heroic Strike and Dread Corsair don't work together.
Oh, that would just be a little bit bonkers. Again, though, something that you said earlier is that Peru would be upset with the fact they drew patches. Now they've got South Sea Captain in hand. I said they didn't care. Now I'm going to go back on myself and agree with you.
Told you they care.
I think
you
Peru
always care.
I think they care very, very much, especially now it's 2 South Sea Captains on the board. Having more cheap pirates hitting the board straight away would be pretty good.
This is not going to work out for Peru either. I mean, in theory, it's a reasonable turn. You know, hide the Frothing behind the Dread Corsair and say, okay, your only real clean answer to this now is probably a Fireball. So you've just used a Frostbolt. You're unlikely to have the second one. Shadowbolt and Ping now this turn is just perfect answers for Netherlands in this spot.
Yeah, it works out nicely, clears away the whole board. And then Pirate Warrior, still no weapon in hand, no Arcanite Reaper to follow up with. I think both of these guys, apart from the double Frothing Berserker, both of these guys have drawn pretty poorly this game, but it seems at the moment at least that it's the Mage coming out on top. If the Mage gets to turn 9, a defensive Alexstrasza can just seal the deal if it's a Mage to go.
Yeah, there's only been one thing wrong with Peru's draw this game. Everything else has been pretty much fantastic. It was just that Patches draw. Like, if you just transform that Patches into N'Zoth's first mate, this draw was insane.
Yep.
Like, absolutely insane. They would have multiple pirates on board. The captains would be buffing pirates. They'd have the 1/3 weapons, so cultists would be buffing the weapons. That one difference of drawing Patches instead of drawing N'Zoth's first mate has turned a god tier hand into a trash tier hand.
Right. Ice Block picked up from Theo here, which I mentioned earlier, the Alexstrasza if the Mage gets to turn 9. Well, with Ice Block it's even easier because the Mage only has to survive until turn 8, then the Ice Block goes up, then the following turn is turn 9, then the Mage can heal back up to 15. It's a little bit situational because if the Pirate Warrior's built up a board at that stage, then it won't necessarily earn the Mage the win automatically, but it's definitely a good step in the right direction.
Yeah, I feel like this is almost a free turn for Netherlands. The fact they now have the Ice Block, they can use this turn to develop block and just play Arcane Intellect if they want to. There's no massive reason to answer this board state. They have Meteor, so, you know, if an additional minion gets played alongside this captain, that's just going to be a perfect clear for them anyway. But they might just be looking at this hand and saying, hey, like, Meteor on 6, Firelands Portal on 7, Block on 8, Alex on 9, and that might just be their game plan going forward.
Meteoring this board seems like a bit of a waste of damage. I very much like the Ice Block here, and going to drop Counterspell too, which can actually save a lot of damage against the Pirate Warrior. If it hits an upgrade after an Arcanite Reaper, great, you've just saved yourself a lot of damage. If it hits Heroic Strike, you've saved yourself 4 damage.
Right.
But I don't think there's any spell that the Warrior has that doesn't just deal a ton of damage.
Yeah, I mean, you know, you say Meteor there would have been a massive waste of damage, and yes, it's horribly inefficient.
Yeah.
15 damage removal into a 3-3, but look at what just happened, because you left one solitary pirate on the board for Pirate Warrior, right? It's a tribal deck. You can do anything you can to disrupt that tribal synergy. It overvalues your cards, right? Like, if you know, there is a buff that the cards you're up against naturally have for being pirates, where you can just afford to use premium stuff against them if it denies that synergy.
So the thing that Theo does have going for him here is that he will survive long enough to play the Alexstrasza. Problem is, as I said before, now Peru have a board, so just playing Alexstrasza and healing yourself back up to 15 on turn 9 isn't actually good enough.
Oh, will he? If his block,
yeah, he might not actually.
if his block goes down next turn, there's a whole extra turn he needs to find somewhere along the line. It's not guaranteed at this point by any means, which is why my brain kind of leapt to that Meteor on 6, Firelands on 7, Block on 8 kind of plan. Like, that just seemed to get you there consistently.
So I guess this is the safest play, just Violence Portal away one of the captains. You said earlier today, the chance of getting a 5-mana card with Taunt is very, well, not very high, but higher than you'd expect it to be.
11 out of 69 is so much higher than I thought it was going to be. When I started digging in to get those stats, I was not expecting it to be, you know, a little bit below 1 in 6.
That's no good though, and I apologize. This game might not go on long enough for the Alexstrasza. I mean, Theo has to like dig for a second Ice Block this turn or something. And
it's a perfect pop at 1 as well.
yeah.
Because of the weapon buff.
If he does find a second Ice Block by using an Arcane Intellect, then that's great. But in the meantime, he's not dealt with this board of pirates. Looks like Peru might just take this.
It's going to be a little bit awkward if the board state can be dealt with. Peru will have pretty much full information that they're facing down Counterspell as the second secret here. They know it's not Barrier, they know it's not Vaporize, so like potentially, I don't know, like Spellbender and Mana Bind are the other possibilities.
Entity and Potion of Polymorph also have been counted out. That's not an Ice Block. It is just Ice Block now that leaves Theo in the game, isn't it?
Arcane Intellect into Glyph into Nova, no, then the weapon just goes. I mean, yeah, if they can lock out all the damage they can see, of course the Heroic Strike can't pop, even if, or even like a drawn Mortal Strike couldn't pop because of the counterspell.
That could actually.
It could in this situation, right? But from Netherlands' perspective, I'm talking from, right? If they can lock out all the damage, then they know the counterspell will protect them against a Mortal Strike. Unfortunately for them, the one card in hand can already clear that counterspell, so this might just be checkmate at this point.
Yep, with the conclusion, they have to draw cards, don't get what they want. This game is over for Theo and Team Netherlands going to take the first loss of the series. Is this the history of today repeating on itself?
I mean, it could very well be. This game was literally just one turn in it, really. I mean, not that the Alexstrasza was a guaranteed savior, but being that one turn away from Alexstrasza, if the block was still up, they could have fully committed this turn to just, say, Meteor to remove a huge amount of the board state, then gone for the defensive Alexstrasza the turn after. Peru just cast the Heroic Strike just to make sure they have complete full information, make sure nothing ridiculous is going to happen that they could have to worry about.
Not sure what Theo was hoping for there, why he didn't concede a little bit sooner. Maybe trying to trick Peru into thinking it was somehow an Ice Block, which wouldn't have been possible, and it just seemed weird.
I played 2 Ice Blocks at once. Yeah.
It just seems weird that they didn't concede at that point. We've seen a lot of early concedes over the last couple of days, actually. Well, not early concedes, but as soon as one of these players realizes, hey, this game's over, they tend to hit the button. They don't really stall around for long. Next up, though, arguably the most popular Hearthstone player out there right now. Tice, gonna be
Big words. Big words.
definitely one of the most
I mean, you used the word arguable. We could definitely have an argument about it, and you'd definitely be wrong.
Right. Wow, okay. He's going to be bringing the Hunter.
I'm kidding. I love Tice.
Kishtar going to be bringing the Paladin. Well, the thing is, Tice is one of these streamers where he has a huge stream. He's very entertaining, but he also just goes around winning tournaments as well. Like you've been talking about Kalento. When he chooses to enter the tournaments, he does a great job. Tice is the same. He has so many wins under his belt recently, and his stream just goes from strength to strength.
Yeah, I think in Tice's case, maybe he suffered a little bit from the switch to streaming. Tice's record historically speaks for itself. It's untouchable. Like, no one can criticize the things this guy has achieved in the game. But, since he really did push a focus towards streaming, he doesn't even say, like travel as much as the rest of the guys, right? Like, Radu will go anywhere to play competitive Hearthstone, and G2 will send him, whereas a lot of the time, Tice is just happy to stay and stream. And, why not, right? If you can just turn your stream on to 10,000 people every day, then that is a solid, secure living you are earning yourself for a very long time. And I think just a little bit his competitive prowess has suffered because of that focus. And of course it will. That's what, to me, is so amazing in particular about Kalento, because it just seems like it hasn't bothered him at all, the fact that he can go like 6 months without playing a tournament.
It's also a different type of stream, isn't it? Like, Kalento doesn't go out of his way to be too entertaining.
Right.
He's straight to the gameplay. Looking at the other side, though, Team Peru and Kishtar, they're going to be feeling confident coming into this series 1 win ahead already. But now Kishtar has to play against Tice, and that's a lot of pressure.
Yeah, and everything that I just said does not change the fact that Tice is a fantastic Hearthstone player, right? Like, form is temporary, class is permanent, is the old cliche, right? And like, he might be a little bit rusty now when it comes to super high level competitive play, but the level of class, intelligence, ability, and knowledge of this game that got him to be a back-to-back European champion, that does not go away overnight or even over 6 months of focusing on streaming.
Very fast mulligan there for Kishtar. Not ending very well either. I don't think he wants any of these cards in the early game against a Hunter. Tice on the other side, his hand not looking bad at all. Alley Cat and Kindly Grandmother, both solid early cards. Houndmaster might even be worth a keep here as well.
Yeah, neither of these decks looking like they are the very most aggressive forms of the class that they could be. In that case, when it's like super aggressive Hunter up against super aggressive Murloc Paladin, like 1-drop is just king. Like if there are cards in your hand that don't read 1 on them, you throw them away and you find those 1-drops, because both of the decks just snowball the board so effectively when they hit 1-drop. Since we're seeing, it's an equality Primordial Drake Paladin and it's a high main Houndmaster kind of Hunter that's coming out, it won't be necessarily won or lost on game 1 and 2. On turn 1 and 2. But hey, Alley Cat into Crackling Razormaw or Alley Cat into Grandma into Crackling Razormaw is about as strong as it gets.
Hunter has always tended to be pretty good against the kind of slower, mid-rangey, control-y decks, just because the strength of Savannah Highmane is so powerful. Primordial Drake will do a good job of stemming that, but it's not quite going to be enough, especially when you look at the start Tice has got here. 2 1-drops, he's got Razormaw next turn if he wants it, he's got Kindly Grandmother if he wants. How does Kishtar keep up with this?
It's a very, very good question, especially now.
Oh my goodness.
Especially now. This is my experience, by the way. Like, I know Murloc-based Paladins are one of the most effective decks in the game, but whenever I try to climb ladder with them, I usually just immediately hit Hunters with Hungry Crab. And I don't know why, because I never play these guys with any other deck.
Again, look at the spring playoff deck lists that we've been seeing on Twitter recently. There's Hungry Crabs in so many decks, and Paladin is just being forcibly, shoved out of the way. Like, just hard target Paladin. Great.
And for the Razormaw this turn, gives him a lot of power in play right now, is the most board dominance he can have, but none of these are particularly useful. +3 attack is just fine. Does mean he has to trade off the incorrect cat like an absolute monster, though, which I do not approve of in any way, shape, or form. But he is representing a lot of damage at this point. I was wondering maybe instead about just the Kindly Grandmother line and then looking to land Razormaw on that instead, because you can find a lot more upside. Buffing a Death Rattle minion and then using a trade in, right? You can get like +3 attack, trade into a bigger minion, etc., etc.
Nope, Tice just going for pure aggression here, and quite rightly so. How does a Paladin deal with a 4-1?
They don't. They quite simply do not. Bluegill Warrior
Yeah,
is
right.
the only card sometimes that can affect the board from hand before turn 4 in
That's
the
the one.
majority of Paladin decks.
Outdoor Peacekeeper would have reset it to a 1/1,
Right.
whilst wasting a really powerful card that could have been great against the Savannah Jaime later. But Peru don't have any of these cards at their disposal. He's just Kishtar's just gonna have to take some damage and then take some more damage.
Yeah, this is the power of what Tice doing it his way has led to. It's meant that now going into the Consecration turn, he has that Kindly Grandmother protection against Consecration, whereas doing it the other way around could potentially have led to him being blown out by Conk in this spot. But you were talking about like the turn 6 advantage that Hunters classically have against other mid-range decks because of Highmane. Against Paladin these days, that's not really the case. Firstly, because of Aldor, which you brought up. But secondly, if your turn 6 is just, okay, slam Highmane, and you still have like a minion in play, well, then they just jam Spike Ridge Steed on their minion.
Right.
And then your Highmane doesn't really have much of an impact on that anyway. So if Hunter is going to win this matchup, more often than not, it's not down to Highmanes on turn 6. It's down to this kind of stuff you're seeing right here, which is just early aggression, too much damage, finish the game out with hero powers later on.
I've just been looking at Kishtar's background, by the way, and it reminded me that he doesn't have the best competitive pedigree, but he is a very popular streamer. So, obviously, part of the beauty of the Hearthstone Global Games is that we have a great mix of competitive players and streamers, and this is where on the spectrum Kishtar falls. So, he will be feeling the nerves here. Tice does have the pedigree we were talking about before. But Kishtar, he's got the whole of Peru behind him. He will have, I'm guessing, received the most votes for entry into the competition. And that's just a little bit of his background.
He looks like a streamer's room.
It does,
him,
exactly, right? That's what reminded me of it.
It looks like someone that has paid special attention to the fact that what is behind them is going to be on camera at all times.
I was just admiring how nice it all looks, and then it clicked. I'm like, oh yeah, he's the streamer.
In the meantime, though, Tice has just continued to push the damage here. Death Rattle onto the Crackling Razormaw with the second Crackling Razormaw means that his board is just incredibly sticky and resilient against any kind of Consecration play. He's just going to keep pushing here, and now, although I said that Highmane can quite easily be countered by a couple of things in the late game, if you've got this level of board dominance and you can afford to trade away your opponent's existing minions and then drop a Highmane behind all this, well then yeah, that card will do just fine.
Yeah, 2 Death Rattles on the board as well. That there is some resilience. Stampeding Kodo, not looking like it's going to have much of an impact against this hand. Maybe just end up killing off a hero power token.
Yeah, it might be useful, like, say if a Stonehill comes down, you might be able to push through it with Kodo for lethal, maybe, like that kind of situation.
Even
but
a Finger is possible.
yeah, I mean, that is why you play Stampeding Kodo, right? Like, that is literally why you put this card in decks. We've seen Jade Druid, for example, now running the Curator package and running Kodo. Firstly, because they haven't really recovered with a 5-drop from the lack of Azure Drake. Yeah. But secondly, like, if you can find some excuse to put Kodo in your deck and just get some free wins against Finger decks, then sure, why wouldn't you?
I like Kishtar targeting the 3-1 with Death Rattle with the Out of Peacekeeper there, forcing the trade from Tice with the one that doesn't have Death Rattle, meaning there's not going to be more immediate pressure on the board. However, Tice just picked up Scavenging Hyena, and he has a board full of beasts that can be traded away. That card has the potential to get very out of control very quickly. And the thing is, if Tice trades away his board to create the big Scavenging Hyena, Tarim isn't even that strong, because Tice's board leaves behind 2 1/1s and a 3/2.
Right. Is the Hyena here, though, good enough to get you off the Highmane plan? You do have, like, Hyena Unleash at any time you want it, but to be fair, the any time you want it might just be right now. My only concern is that Netherlands are so far ahead now at this point that you have to start asking yourself the question, how do I lose? And the one way you might lose in this spot is an Equality Consecration clear, which you are going directly into to a turn 6. So Highmane and then test for that kind of stuff and then follow up later with the Unleash would be a little bit more resilient against that. But the way this is being traded out right now, it looks like he's retaining the Grandmother in original form. So he would still retain a 3/2 on the board through exactly this top deck. And look at what that meant.
Yeah, I was just about to ask you, what does this play actually lose to? And there it is, there's the answer. It doesn't strictly lose to Equality Consecration.
No.
As you said, the big bad wolf will stay on the board. But that is almost a reset switch for Peru.
You have to ask the question, right? Being so far ahead, did you really need to take this risk? And I like that they didn't go all the way in, right? They went 95% all in, and by holding back the grandmother, they've kept this 3-2. They get to push 3 more, and I guess from Netherlands' perspective, this is just fine. Now just backing this up with a high main after they've already seen an outdoor peacekeeper be used. So definitely can't criticize the play too much, but even though, you know, this was a game that seemed fairly straightforward for the Netherlands, something that they've been incredibly advantaged in the whole time, pretty much. They have now perhaps just given a window for Peru to try and get back into it.
Yeah, the problem with the high main is this exact play. Sunkeeper Tarim trades effectively against both of these minions. Tice is going to need a little something extra to push forward.
Ooh.
He does have Tundra Rhino, which will allow him to... Well, the high main on its own can now trade away Tarim. And the Direwolf is going to make these trades a little bit sweeter.
So high main Wolf would already trade through.
Now high main...
Sorry, high main Hyena would
now
already
high main,
traded through.
Single Hyena will do it though, thanks to the Direwolf alpha
Right,
there,
exactly.
which is actually really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
Wait, it's not lethal, is it? No, it's close.
No, it's 9, I think, gets to connect to face from here. Yeah. Which means it is lethal through Consecration. It's not lethal through Primordial Drake, though. Oh, sorry, Direwolf gets to charge as well. It's 2 extra
Right,
even.
right.
And Coin Crab is lethal in the end.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
I forgot that the Direwolf got to charge as well. I was giving credit to like the Tundra Rhino charging, the Hyenas charging.
I remember the Direwolf, but forgot the Coin Hungry Crab was a thing. Hungry Crab, of course, is a beast. It's one of the reasons that you can get away with that tech and the Galactic Crawler in the Hunter and the Token Druid. The beast synergy is so strong. And Tice taking it away after what did get a little bit dicey for him for a few moments there.
I mean, you have to say, you know, we were talking about like, could he afford to get a quality consecrated in that position? You know, was that the one play that could perhaps lose them the game when they were so far ahead? Well, the answer was a resounding no. I mean, they were fine with the quality. Like, a quality consecrate happened. It's not like they needed any spectacular draws from there. Like, they picked up the Tundra Rhino, but they had plenty of aggression to back that up anyway. So they, from their perspective, clearly could afford to take the risk against that equality consecration. Solid play to retain the 3-2 on the board afterwards with the grandmother, and then we're just able to finish out the game with the last few pieces of pressure coming through.
The other thing is that the equality consecration was, I think, literally the worst case scenario. Without those cards, Peru didn't have a chance to get through the play that Tyson made.
Right, but you know, the argument is in that kind of situation, without those cards, they don't really have a chance in any way, like regardless of what play you make, right?
Next up is going to be It's a Hide versus Izzy. It's a Hide on the Paladin. I don't think we've seen an awful lot of this matchup lately. In fact, I was saying to Raven earlier, we haven't seen an awful lot of Druid over the last couple of days.
That's probably fair, yeah.
Especially not Jade Druid. It's all been Token.
Right, and I'm actually a big fan of both types of Druids these days. I think Jade Druid is one of the strongest decks overall in terms of just, you know, average win rate against the field.
Yeah.
I think now that it's so secure against aggressive decks now, with Earthen Scales being such a great cycle tool off Auctioneer, as well as a useful tool for just rebounding your life total. Tar Creeper as well coming in, and obviously just being able to get Primordial Drakes down on turn 5, 6, depending on how solid your ramp drawer has been, like that's just backbreaking to aggro. And then, yeah, aggro Druid itself is just like the king of the high roll decks. Like there are draws that you just cannot beat against aggro Druid.
As we have witnessed a few times today. The weird thing is about the Jade Druid is that I feel as though week by week with the Hearthstone Global games, we've been seeing the percentage of Druids has been shifting a little bit more each week towards the Jade Druid. Like originally it was mostly Token Druids, and then every week a few more Jade Druids. And now today, this week, just Jade Druids have disappeared. Just weird.
It's true. I think it started off with primarily the Asian countries were favoring the Jade Druid, while Aggro Druid was more popular in the West, and then that kind of bled through, and Jade Druid started to become more popular on this side of the globe as well. And now you're right, it does seem like a nod to Aggro Druid is coming back. And there's actually a variety of different lists as well. Some people are starting to run a no Finger package list, which I personally prefer. I'm sure, like, yes, you can innovate Finger and it's all wonderful in Aggro Druid, but I think, like, just the devastating feeling of just, like, top decking a Bluegill Warrior, because with Aggro Druid, perhaps more than any deck, you are at the mercy of what your next card is, right? So your job is to load your deck in a way that your next card is always very strong. Like how old school Zoo used to be. So having like double Innovate and 2 Bluegill Warriors and 2 Murloc War Leaders in your deck just gives you so many miserable draws from there that I feel like I'd just rather have more things like Bitter Tide
Well, exactly.
Hydras.
Innovating out an 8/8, at least in my opinion, feels as good most of the time as innovating out a Finja.
Right. It's vulnerable to a couple of things that Finja necessarily isn't, as long as the Finja gets to go off. But there's so many options that you can play. There's like Shell Shifters, Bitter Tide Hydras, Living Mana, of course, is just in every version because that card is just absurd.
Yeah.
But there's so many other tools that you can play where you don't also have to expose yourself to these 4 other garbage cards in your deck and expose yourself to Hungry Crab tech that everyone else is running on ladder.
We're even seeing the kind of less all-in versions, as you mentioned before, with the Shell Shifter. Even Menagerie Warden has seen some play.
Really?
Yeah, copying 8/8s. There was one deck list, I forget, I apologize, I forget who the original creator of that list was, but I remember that Tyler was playing it.
Interesting.
And having
I missed
some
that one.
success with it. But now we've got Izzy on the Jade Druid, so finally, like, a little bit of order has been restored. Jade Druid does still exist. I'm sure several of the teams have brought Jade Druid and just opted to go with the other class.
Yeah, of course. And I think, when I mention the Jade Druid these days is slightly more resilient against these kind of board-focused aggressive decks, Paladin is perhaps the exception to that, because Druid doesn't have the consistent tools to break apart the early synergy, right? So, Murloc into Rockpool Hunter or Murloc into Coin War Leader, all that kind of stuff. Like, Druid just quite often has to let that happen.
Yeah.
And then, furthermore, even if they do stabilize, if they get, like, a big Primordial Drake clear, if they manage to just clear the board and then start to gather resources with Auctioneer, all that kind of stuff, like, Paladin just has the tools to shut down one big late-game push from a Jade Druid anyway, with Sunkeeper Tarim, etc., potentially a Quality Consecrate as well, so Paladin just checks all the boxes when it comes to just being like an anti-Druid class in general.
One thing that Jade Druids can do and has done over the course of the last year that can win against any matchup is just, innovate out Fandral on turn 1, just get a nice 3/5 body that can trade with anything the aggressive decks have got.
Yeah, Fandral, not quite the card it used to be. It's still good enough to be in the deck just because of, like, Wrath and Nourish.
No Raven Idol, though.
There's no Raven Idol, there's no Living Roots, right? That when Innovate Fandral came out, you were scared of Wrath, Living Roots, and Raven Idol. Those are the things that terrified you. Now there's really only Wrath that makes a big impact. Like, sure, Feral Rage is nice, but it's not the end of the world. Yeah. Impacts like Raven Idol, Living Roots, and Wrath were far more devastating to the opponent. And if an Innovate Fandral comes down, you're hardly scared of, like, Nourish, right? Like, and if there's then second Innovate coin Nourish following that up, well, okay, friend, you win this game. That's fine. You can have this one.
Now, with the perfect cast knowledge that I have, I actually think that...
You heard it here first.
Perfect knowledge...
Falcone has perfect caster knowledge.
Of the hand. Perfect caster knowledge of the hands. I even think Noble Sacrifice would have ended up being better here for Mitsuhide, especially if Izzy goes ahead and plays the Fandral here. Potentially would have blocked Peru from dealing with these Murlocs. However, Getaway Kodo is the pick that makes sense. You're playing against what could be a very value-oriented deck. Getting more value yourself is a surefire way of winning and lasting into the late game.
Yeah, your job in this matchup is definitely just to tempo as hard as you possibly can. Beating Jade Druid on value is a nightmare for any deck, even one that is as value-heavy as Paladin can be with the repeated, Stonehill Defenders, Curator, all the value engines that they do have in the deck. It's still nothing when it comes up against the Infinite Jade engine, but crucially now for Izzy, that Wrath has been picked up. Like I said, this is really the only early game card that's backbreaking when paired with Innovate Fandral. Feral Rage is nice, 8 extra health that you wouldn't have got otherwise while you remove a minion, but this isn't really going to be a matchup where your health total is super important. It's going to be a battle for board control first and foremost.
Yeah, Mitsuhide doesn't actually have that many options here. He can play the Rockpool Hunter, buff up Murloc, he can play a second Hydrologist. Big deal. Izzy has all of the tools that he needs next turn to get rid of every Murloc from the board. Paladin, very, very tribal-oriented class here. Well, very tribal-oriented deck. And just preventing all Murloc synergy is a pretty good way of just beating the Paladin entirely.
Gonna go with Feral Rage here just for mana efficiency, which I do agree with, because once this board is cleared, we talked about this before. There is one card that Paladin can potentially use to affect the board from hand prior to turn 4 in realistic decks that you might be coming up against, and that is Bluegill Warrior. If Bluegill Warrior is the card, that doesn't clear the Fandral, which means you get another turn of Fandral guaranteed against this deck. So you might as well be mana efficient, go with the Feral Rage. Even though the Wrath is the more important card, 100% of the time you get to play that next turn. You can also squeeze in Wild Growth or a Hero Power, depending on what you need to react.
Yeah, this Fandral's looking like it's going to live forever at the moment. I wonder if this time Noble Sacrifice is the pick, though. Do you think the infinite value is more important here? Repentance just isn't good against Jade Druid. Like, great, it hits a Jade Spirit and reduces that health to 1. Because it doesn't affect the Jade golems, it's just not worthwhile. I didn't catch what that was.
It was sack.
It was sack, but right, okay, good. I was looking at you, Sottle, at the wrong time.
Can't blame you. Wrath this 2-2, see what happens. If it's Redemption, you can Hero Power it down. If nothing happens, you pretty much confirm that it's Noble Sacrifice
And
at
you
that
still
point.
Hero Power.
So you can Hero Power the face if you really want to. You can also just play Wild Growth and not attack if you really want to go that way and protect your Fandral against Consecration. And next turn you just curve into Jade Behemoth anyway. Because curving into Jade Behemoth actually feels pretty important for you right now.
This is fine too, because if there was a true silver champion in Mitsuhide's hand, then getting rid of the secret with the Hero Power doesn't change your opponent's play. A true silver champion would still have dealt with the Fandral.
Yep.
With the Wild Growth, it sets up for the Jade Behemoth, and the Druid really does start to get going.
So this is now, from Netherlands' perspective, this is the first turn where Nourish could be cast alongside this Fandral. So is that knowledge worth them spending their entire turn consecrating this Fandral Staghelm?
I think it is. I think they have to.
Do you now?
Or do they have to? Well, they could hold on to the consecration for hopefully an Equality later. They do have a Primordial Drake for that. Equality Drake on turn 10 is actually a great comeback mechanic for the Paladin.
How dead are you by turn 10, though? That's my question.
If Nourish happens with the Fandral on board, you're very dead by turn 10. So I think,
That's an excellent point.
think the consecration is mandatory here.
I'm feeling disrespectful, Falcon. I don't know. My brain is telling me that it's Vilefin and Hero Power instead. If that secret was something a little bit more promising than Getaway Kodo, then maybe that would be better, but Netherlands deciding they're just going to have to suck it up and consecrate the Fandral here, and that gives Izzy a brand new board to develop on. Jade Behemoth will do that quite nicely. Crucially, perhaps for Netherlands, the J count only at 1-1 so far, because most of this early game has been dictated by that Fandral Staghelm. There is the True Silver coming out, being an absolute tease to the Netherlands, 1 turn too late.
Yep, everything went wrong for Mitsuhide there. He didn't go with your play, which would have been just leave the Fandral alive. He would not have been punished if he did leave the Fandral alive. So unfortunately, just didn't work out very well. And now what? Now is it just Hero Power rather than Hero Power? God, that feels bad.
Yeah, this is kind of I was so concerned about on the previous turn, is that, like, consecrate into what? Like, what was your curve with that plan? I don't know. So, a really horrible spot to be in, though. I definitely, like, would have to sit down and genuinely just stop talking and think for, like, 90 seconds and try and figure out what I would have done that turn. It was a really, really tough spot to be in, and it's rare these days. You said, hey, Innovate Fandral can win games you're not supposed to win.
Yeah.
And, my counterpoint was, well, Fandral isn't quite the card it used to be. If you do, nail that Wrath alongside the Fandral, then yeah, that thing's an absolute monster.
And we touched upon the Fandral into Nourish a few times as well. That would have just won Izzy the game if the scenario came up, though Mitsuhide played around it perfectly and it was never drawn anyway. There it is! Just a little bit too late. Well, again, not that it would have mattered because Mitsuhide did play around it.
Right.
Though, it's still highly relevant here, as Izzy's hand is now lacking many threats. Yeah, there's a Jade Spirit, but there's also now a Nourish. And, Izzy could do with the restock, even if he waits until next turn and then restocks.
Yeah, there's no real reason to nourish right now, I don't think. Just dump your hand as best you can. Your big concern here is just generating enough of a board presence so that you can clear anything that comes down from the opponent.
Yeah.
Since the True Silver is in play, you're losing your 3-2, and then if there's like a big minion, if there's like a few minions, a couple of Murlocs dropped by Mitsuhide, and you've taken the time out to nourish, well then next turn, you're going to have to swipe the board to make sure they can't land Spike Ridge Steed, right? Because that's the big denial point. So I like loading minions up on going into their turn 6 just to make sure you can kind of stop any of this nonsense from happening, right?
Do you remember that consecration that was in Mitsuhide's hand earlier?
I do, yeah.
How good would that have been right now?
Quite strong.
Unfortunately, a little bit early for Primordial Drake. Though, 3 minions on the board, 2 of them are Murlocs. It does fall to Izzy to make these trades. Not too much for him to complain about, though. He can even just nourish into Target Reaper. Oh, so that's a getaway Kodo on the board that's going to put a 1-1 probably in hand.
If he wants to continue denying Spike Ridge Steed from happening 100% of the time, he cannot nourish into Tark Reaper, because there's no 3 damage attack to throw into the Vile Fin, so he wouldn't be able to clear the board. So I would suspect that Peru still keep that in mind, and the Nourish will have to wait a little bit longer here. He can choose to like make a weird trade or swipe face, like this, to give a token back to the hand instead of the 1-3. That's pretty heads-up play, and trade with the 2-2 here because you want to keep your 3 health minion out of range of Drake for 1 turn from now, and then just drop the Tar Creeper behind all of this. Yep, perfect. I like this play.
Yep, Tar Creeper almost fits the curve perfectly, but does a great job of protecting the minions already on the board. Sunkeeper Tarim there, one of the most powerful Paladin cards, I think it's fair to say, not looking so powerful in this spot. Unfortunately, he'll be buffing more of Izzy's minions than it would be doing good for himself. Of course, the 1-mana minion into the Spike Ridge Steed does give Mitsuhide a pretty good board, and it is going to take a lot for Peru to get rid of it.
Yeah, actually worth thinking about there. When I was talking about denying the Spike Ridge Steed, once you got the knowledge that it was Getaway Kodo that you activated, it didn't matter which one of those things you killed first.
No way of denying
it was always a 1-mana minion that was going back into the hand. So potentially you could have tried to disrespect the Spike Ridge just a little bit more, but if you left a minion in play, you're also then giving the Spike Ridge Steed charge, which is just a whole different animal. So I still like the full clear. Does go ahead and nourish now that he's run out of value in the hand. Gadgetzan Auctioneer twice with a Jade Idol in hand as well, looking like some potential big cycle turns can happen in the future, and I don't think there's anything too wrong with just letting the status quo continue here for a turn or two, although actually there is, and its name is Primordial Drake. This board is disgustingly bad against Primordial Drake.
Something they have just noticed is that Mitsuhide's only got 14 health left.
Yes.
We're actually rapidly reaching the end of the game, and again, it's the Druid, it's the more controlled deck that's been the aggressor here.
Innovate Fandral will do that to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is about the only play Peru could have made which did not lose the game in devastating fashion to Primordial Drake. So again, I really like the way they have played this game so far. The Feral Rage on turn 3, knowing that they were going to guarantee the Wrath on the following turn. The way they made the trades previously to give themselves maximum chance, deny maximum value from Getaway Kodo and maximum protection against Primordial Drake, and now again this turn continuing to respect how bad Primordial Drake would be for them.
The one problem with this play, as we can see, and as I mentioned a moment ago, that really powerful Paladin card, the Sunkeeper Tarim, which was looking weak because of how wide Izzy's board is, now it's not looking so bad.
Yeah, and the more and more Netherlands start to grab board control here with small minions. The Silverhand Recruit that's in hand, the Tidal Hand Hero Power making more 1/1s, Rockpool Hunter is a 2/3. The more of these small minions they can get down, the better and better Sunkeeper Tarim becomes.
Jade Spirit does give Izzy the option to go wide and try and put a stop to the power level of the Sunkeeper Tarim, but can he afford to not just play Gadgetzan Auctioneer this turn? It does seem very strong, but he does have to rely on drawing some cheap spells straight away. Something like an Earthen Scale, like if you can get Auctioneer, Jade Idol, Earthen Scales, maybe then another Jade Idol, it could be insane. but it also could just whiff straight away.
Yeah, he's also down an Innovate already, the early game Innovate, which would... That's pretty much your best draw at this point. And as we can see it, it's just Auctioneer one spell. That's all available to him unless he starts setting off a chain. One Feral Rage, one Innovate, one Wrath have all been used early in that Fandral exchange. So it is pretty much down to just the Earthen Scales, the second copies of those cards, and potentially the second Jade Idol as well that he can pick up, which is not a huge chunk remaining in his deck.
Right, so is he just actually not going to play the Auctioneer? Going to just go with the Swipe and the Jade Spirit. I like this. Leaves Mitsuhide with only 1 minion on the board, so Sunkeeper Tarim isn't too devastating, especially given how wide Izzy's board is now. Drake, Primordial Drake also doesn't actually do all that much, doesn't clear anything at all. In fact, if Primordial Drake came down and Mitsuhide had to trade the Curator into the Tar Creeper, then it would clear Netherlands board. Is it Kodo time?
It's about as much value as Kodo's ever going to get, really. Like, the Jades are running out of control from this point. You do have the Outdoor combo that you could use to snipe a Jade later, but it would mean holding on to a bunch of cards in hand and just failing to, like, tempo out against Druid, which is basically what you want to do at all times. And this just allows a very clean and efficient board clear overall.
I think this is the second Kodo that we've seen from Netherlands today. Because they had the one against
Everyone in Hunter as well.
Yeah. Oh, look, there's the Earthen Scales, which would have been the next draw off of the Kazakhstan Auctioneer had it played last turn. Now, though, he can play the Auctioneer into 2 cheap spells. It's a higher chance of getting a third.
Yeah, continuing to summon as well, even though, of course, there is some upside of just loading your deck with the cheap spells at that point when you're going on an Auctioneer turn, but he knows he can't really afford to take that risk. He needs the extra board presence right now, even though the 4/4 just gets sniped down immediately by the True Silver. It's still siphoning away a target from that Auctioneer, which then threatens to eat up the rest of the board afterwards.
Yeah, now Netherlands picking up another big boy. I was going to say the big boy, but Primordial Drake is pretty big himself. Tyrion Fordering has the potential of just shutting down the game entirely. Izzy just wants to deal this last little bit of damage, but Mitsuhide not going to make that easy.
Yeah, Tyrion, definitely a huge defensive wall here. Mitsuhide will be, as you said, concerned about his life total. As much as Izzy wants to deal those last few points of damage, Mitsuhide will be realizing that he has very little to play with here, but he's also safe in the knowledge that both swipes have been used for board control already. So as long as he keeps control of the board, there's not going to be charge minions and there's not going to be direct damage
Even
coming out from Jade Druid.
So.
Right. The only issue here is just how frustratingly inefficient the Auctioneer kill is, and I think that's the reason why we are seeing the Tarim come out. Because otherwise it was just miserably inefficient to double trade into an Auctioneer and then True Silver down the 4/4, even though it let you develop a stronger turn behind that with Tyrion Hero Power potentially. It just meant you gave up far too many resources trading in, so this just seems like a more powerful play overall.
Curious as to Mitsuhide playing the Rockpool Hunter before the Tarim there. He actually ended up with less total stats this way, as he would have had a 4/4 and a 2/3, as opposed to a 3/3 and a 3/3. I don't think it particularly matters here, though. It's a good point.
I've never really considered that.
It's like one stat. It would have been.
No, you lose one stat.
Yeah. Metro Megasword not looking like the worst draw there. 2 3/3 Murlocs on the board. Wind Fury is a lot of damage. Attack is a lot of damage. Of course, Mitsuhide could Hero Power first if you wanted to go with that line. Instead, going with old reliable Tyrion.
Counter argument. Tyrion.
Yeah.
Just pushing. Recognize now the Netherlands that they have fully turned the corner here. Even with only 11 health to play with, they are fully the aggressors in this matchup now. And Primordial Drake does make a dent in this board, but not much more than that. Those 3 health minions from Tarim. 3 is just such a frustrating number to stare down as the opponent. You know, Shamans with Lightning Storm, even Volcano because multiples of 3 can get outside of 15 so very quickly.
It's not horrible for Izzy, Drake, Earthen Scales to buff up Aya, trade Aya into Tyrion, trade the 5/5 into Tarim. It does just leave the small things on the board, well, just three 3/1s, and it also leaves Izzy with a 6/6 Jade Golem. It's not horrible. It's just, is Jade Behemoth better? I still think the Drake is better.
Drake definitely seems like the most promising play. Something else you have to consider now is that Auctioneer potentially getting stranded in the hand at this point. Earthen Scales is a card that you would want to synergize with that at some point. But leading out with the Drake, no matter what happens, the downside, of course, is that you lose the value trade here as well of the 5/3 into the Tarim, because you do that 2 damage to your own guy anyway, so you're not even preserving any value there. It's just not a pretty play overall, but he does go for your line here. But Murloc War Leader and Gentle Megasaur can now make an absolute mess of this board state.
Is it actually possible to hit it just within this turn? I don't think it is, but it can't be that far off. With Wind Fury.
Wind Fury would still only
20 damage.
push, yeah. It's just a little bit short. +3 attack is a single clean trade into the 4/8, so is Poisonous. They both essentially do the same thing. It's just +3 attack is a bit more aggressive to the face, whereas Poisonous is more resilient against the additional large minions that are going to be coming down from Jade Druid in the future.
More aggressive to the face. I like it. At some point in this game, Mitsuhide has shifted the tide, taken the control away from the Jade Druid, and now it looks like it's going to be really tough for Izzy to come back.
Yeah, this looks like Aldor the 6/6 and Jam Face to me. Seems like a solid plan.
I say this every time a Jade Druid's in this position, but it feels like there's no other comeback. Yogg-Saron is a possibility.
Sound the Yogg alarm. Yogg-Saron, the caster's new Deathwing.
Right? Exactly.
Yeah.
But again, Yogg-Saron is a card that regularly does see play in the Jade Druid. Unfortunately, not right now. And now, obviously, it could still get drawn from the Auctioneer, but it wouldn't be doing much.
The difference is, like, back in the day when, how can you possibly win this game? Oh, we can draw Deathwing. Like, very rarely did Deathwing even actually ever win those games when it was that far gone, whereas, yes, Yogg can actually just win any game.
Yeah. Just summon a Jade Golem, Shadow Flame it, play Call of the Wild.
Job done.
Yeah. Has to be specifically, like in the old days, it could have just been, okay, Twisting Nether and then summon some stuff. But obviously, Yogg actually has to live now to do his thing.
More importantly, Peru are trying to find answers here with the Auctioneer. They hit Innovate into Wild Growth, which was about as good a chain of draws as they could have possibly found, but still just no answers to the board state. And Izzy is going to fall short for Peru. It's Netherlands that are going to go out to the 2-1 lead. And even through that devastatingly fast start with the Innovate Fandral, with Feral Rage and Wrath to back it up, even with that fast start, even with the miserable turn 4 of Consecrate a 3-1 Fandral and say go, Paladin is favoured enough in that matchup just to be able to push through in the end.
Such a turnaround from Mitsuhide there, both in that one game and in the series as a whole, as Tice and Mitsuhide have brought Netherlands back forwards into the lead, hoping to break the curse of today, where Netherlands know that they're the better known team, they know they're the more popular guys, they want to show that popularity does sometimes equal winning in Hearthstone.
It would be a hell of a streak to break at this point. I think overall, like, the favorites have been winning fairly consistently throughout HGG. When you look at the group standings, when you kind of filter through the group and say, okay, which country is the big name in here? Well, they're sitting at the top of the group usually, right? You look at USA and Ukraine, Russia, right? They're all starting to pick up wins. But today, for some reason, we've just entered Bizarro World. Like, the favorites are just losing over and over again. So it would be a massive streak to break for Netherlands if they, as the favored team, the favored country in this matchup, would be able to come out with the win.
Yeah, it's weird that we're saying it would be the end of the streak if the favored team does win, but that's just the day that we've had.
It's just the world we live in now.
Day full of upsets. It's been very entertaining and very, I think, full of suspense. I know I'm full of suspense today. I don't know what I'm hoping happens.
It's adorable.
I love Hearthstone. I love watching
he
Hearthstone.
genuinely does. It's a great thing. He's so excited and happy to be able to watch Hearthstone.
We all love Hearthstone. That's why we're here. That's why you guys are watching. It's
Really loves it though.
I do.
Really.
It's true.
You should just get a room. Daniel Falcone and Hearthstone. Yeah.
I do. Like, I just sit there in my room at night with my tablet and just playing it.
Too much information.
All right, next game is going to be Nandeeb versus Tyler, I believe. Tyler as the 4th player for Team Netherlands. I'm kind of surprised to see him 4th. The whole of Team Netherlands have a lot of prestige, but Tyler is one of these guys that a lot of people have respect for. A lot of people watch his stream because, as we mentioned earlier, he's always like top 50 legend somewhere, often top 10 legend.
It's always top 1.
Even, well, yeah, on 3 servers. Like, after 23 hours of streaming, he doesn't seem to suffer from fatigue. He still continues to win games. I've seen him, like, after 19 hours saying, I could end now, but it feels like it'd be a waste of time if I haven't progressed up the rank. I just want to climb another 50 ranks. Like he's ranked 60, and he says, I just want to climb another 50 ranks, and then I'll have the stream.
Yeah, and I made the point before, you know, we've thrown the term ladder god around. We've thrown the term, you know, has a ton of great results on ladder, all this kind of stuff. And like, all that does is when we apply it to people who can, you know, fairly regularly finish top 100, that's not quite ladder god status. Ladder god status is, you know, rank 1 legend on all 3 servers in the same day. Right, that is what Tyler has been able to achieve during these marathon streaming sessions that we're talking about. So if there is one man that you want to hold up as the shining example of a Hearthstone grinder right now, it is Tyler.
This man has also played a lot of Questro. He's one of those players that just, again, grinded and grinded and grinded. And I'd probably place him as one of the best Questro players in the world.
I would not dispute that for 1 second.
And picking up Glacial Shard and Igneous Elemental in their opening hand, that's something a good Questro player would do, right?
Daniel.
Actually throwing away the Shard.
Yeah, I'm actually not a fan of Glacial Shard, particularly in the mirror. It's generally only a card that you're keeping against very aggressive decks. I think in the mirror, you want your bounce effects, you want Igneous Elemental. If you're keeping Igneous Elemental, you want the extra tools to go alongside that, such as the Firefly, to be able to you know, be Flame Elemental number 3 for you, and then you're only 1 bounce effect away. So there was a very large percentage of the deck that has significant upside over Glacial Shard in that position, so no surprise to see it thrown away.
Let the race to complete the quest complete. Nandeeb has Firefly in his hand. If he picks up an Igneous Elemental, then he's getting pretty close. He'd then have all of the tools that he needs. Tyler just needs one more way of generating a Flame Elemental, and then he's done.
Right.
He's got the Igneous, that gives him 2 Flame Elementals. He's got a Ferryman, that could give him the 3rd. It just becomes a big puzzle as both players try to work out the fastest way of completing the quest.
Yeah, and crucial as well is like the mana cost of the whole situation. So for example, for Tyler to like play the 3 Flame Elementals that we can quote see right now, see is a weird word, but like know he has access to. Yeah. So that would cost him 3 mana for the Igneous, 4 and 5 for the 2 Flame Elementals that come out, and then 6, 7 for the Ferryman, and then 8 for the 3rd Flame Elemental to come down. So that's 8 mana he would need to allocate to those 3 at that point. And then if it's another Bouncer, that takes him up to 11 to complete the quest, whereas if it's another Firefly, then it only takes him up to 10. And actually, like, total mana cost is actually one of the most relevant things when it comes to racing to complete the quest, because once you know how much total mana you are spending, you can start to actually figure out what your turn clock is, right? Like, how much mana can I allocate each turn so I can try and get this done on turn 4, turn 5? Like, when is it happening?
Look at this. While you were explaining that, Tyler picks up the Hungry Crab. Immediately after, Nandeeb picks up a Murloc. That seems like it's a slight advantage to Tyler there. He's one of the players that I believe his deck lists for playoffs, 3 out of 4 decks have double Hungry Crab in them. I think he even has an emote.
He does.
For Hungry Crab.
Yeah. Which can be used for strange purposes that he didn't quite intend, to make weird like heart symbols and things with the crab pincers. But regardless, it's a sweet emote. You should all go sub to Tyler.
Yeah. It's a good move.
Yeah, I agree. You will get value, because no matter what time of day you are awake and want to watch a streamer, Tyler will be on.
That's
so
true.
It's actually good value for your sub.
Personally, I insta-subbed to Tyler when I went into the stream and he said my name correctly. It's
Nice.
not something that... I don't think you and Raven say my name right still. So,
Falcone?
yeah, there you go.
Okay.
But yeah, so that
I was gonna say,
that earned an insta-sub.
pretty sure that's right.
Oh, Raven doesn't say it right.
And Raven just says like Falk, right?
Yeah. That's cool though, it's cute.
You're cute.
Pet name. Thank you.
Prep Mimic Pod, is that a play you're looking to make here, or is Prep more valuable to be accelerating your quest turn? In the mirror, I think accelerating the quest turn is very, very powerful, but there's a trap you can fall into with this deck where you start planning for things that happen after the quest. But it's kind of like the Underpants Gnomes plan, right? There's a few question marks in the middle of your plan before you get to profit if you don't plan to get there as soon as possible.
Tyler looks like he's planning to complete the quest with Igneous Elementals. Forget Flame Elementals. I mean, me and Raven saw...
No, carry on.
Raven and I, sorry, saw a quest road complete with Tar Creepers earlier. So it is possible to do it with 3 drops. And actually...
was that the Osaka game?
Yeah, that's right.
Because I stepped outside for some air during that game and I was on break.
Yeah,
and
the quest was completed with Tar Creeper. He lost, but the quest was completed with.
So he like mimic podded into Tar Creepers
or
something. Okay, cool. That's awesome.
And it could happen here, especially if Nandai prevents the Igneous Elemental from dying. Might actually be best use for that card.
So, if you wanted to actually complete the quest with Igneous Elementals, let's take this seriously for a second. That's 6 mana on Iggy's, and then 8 with the Ferryman, then up to 11 with the Igneous Elemental, which is the same number I ended up with on the Flame Elemental count anyway.
Right. Well, there you go.
Doesn't seem too unreasonable.
And Tyler will be sitting there doing the maths right now, working out if that genuinely is the way he wants to go.
Well, here's the real thing, is that you don't actually have to commit to that kind of plan just yet. Like, you're not killing any of these Igneous Elementals just yet, and you're not bouncing any of these Igneous Elementals just yet. So you can just play Igneous Elemental number 2, and then if they're able to trade off, well, great. You can then play 4 Flame Elementals for 4 mana.
There is nothing Nandai can do about it. He's not going to want to deal with the Igneous Elementals, as you said. And he's going to know as soon as one of these Igneous Elementals comes down that there's another one because it came from a Mimic Pod.
Yes.
As long as they're tracking the hands. But again, there's nothing he can do about it.
Yeah, you know the Shard is there from the Netherlands perspective, though, since it's the card that's being bounced. So your ability to get value out of Igneous Elemental that way is kind of diminished by the fact that one will be consistently being frozen.
Yeah.
Like you give credit to your opponent when they start bouncing Glacial Shard turn after turn. Normally, now as people have got better and better with this deck, they don't spend entire turns playing and bouncing a minion until they're sure that they can pay that off at the end, right? So you're kind of giving credit to your opponent for being able to fulfill their quest. So this turn, Netherlands really expected Glacial Shard and Bounce to come back down again. So they're trying to plan for how they defend against a quest activation that's quicker than theirs. But the weird part is that that's not actually the reality that they live in right now. Like they're dealing with a Glacial Shard that doesn't have the final bounce it needs right now.
Yeah. I find that in Quest Rogue mirrors, the reality that we're in tends to be a pretty strange one, where both players have to do some bizarre things, both to speed up the progress of their own quest and also prevent the progress of their opponent. That Igneous Elemental isn't going anywhere. So I guess next turn, potentially, Tyler could go Igneous Elemental Ferryman. The following turn, double Igneous Elemental.
I don't think it's right, though. Now that you see that the Glacial Shard hasn't been played, you know there's a pretty good chance that your Igneous Elementals will start to be able to trade and get value that way, right? And if you ever get to kill your Igneous Elemental, then that mana count thing that I was doing goes completely out the window because you just play 4 Flame Elementals for 4 mana, right? That's so much cheaper than any other way you can do it. And if from Netherlands' perspective now they see that the Glacial Shard isn't being played, then this hand read becomes very, very straightforward. You know the Shard is there because it's been returned to hand. You know that the last bounce isn't there because then you would just see that done to set up the quest activation. So they know there is a Shard isolated in hand right now, waiting for either the final bounce effect or Shard number 2 to come out of the deck to finish the quest.
Yeah, and it may be a few turns before Peru actually gets there. There's no guarantee the next draw is going to be a bouncer. Vanish, card that Tyler just picked up, also very likely to be in Peru's deck. Very, very bad in this matchup.
Just tempoed Ferryman as a River Croc.
Huh.
Okay,
very different game plan to the one I had in mind, but it makes a lot of sense following what you were saying. Is it possible for Tyler to win the game without completing the quest, though?
I mean, if neither deck ever completes the quest, then yes, one of them will eventually win. But I think this is just, trying to defend the board as best as he possibly can.
That would be the weirdest quest rogue clearer that I've ever seen if neither of them complete the quest.
There's a weird, knock-on effect that comes from this as well by, he's generated 6 power on board now, as Tyler. So that kind of requires a board response from Peru. So it might make them play, more higher quality minions. And then if higher quality minions are played, then the Igneous Elementals get to trade because there's 2 attack, 3 attack minions on board that you're forcing your opponent to play that they wouldn't have had to otherwise.
Right. Nandibe, considering what to do about this messy board.
Messy's a good word.
It's just a guaranteed 4 damage each turn, unless he's willing to sacrifice the Glacial Shard, which he definitely isn't.
Yeah, there's no way he can just reset his entire count or just trust the fact that the one remaining card in his deck that he can rely on at that point is just Glacial Shard number 2, the natural one.
So, just going to take a very passive turn here.
Ooh, Tar Creepers.
Tar Creepers.
Draw.
We've seen a lot of Tar Creeper over the last couple of days. It's going to actually defend Tyler's board, if he even wants it defended.
Quest is done here in a variety of ways, though, for Tyler. When I say quest is done, I mean the tools are all there. Now that the Igneous Elemental gets to die, there is 2 Flame Elementals being played and then vanish, and then 2 more Flame Elementals that get played. You can do that at any point you want now in the near future since you have access to the preparation. So this is the point where where Netherlands will all communicate with each other and just try and lay out the very best possible game plan. Do they want to use the preparation for the vanish so they speed up their own quest activation? Do they want to just let the Flame Elemental vanish thing happen naturally so they can prep out the quest later? What is the most efficient, most punishing, most aggressive way that they can do this?
This is one of those games where the communication between the players, I think, is at its most important because there is so much to think about. We're going to see the rope burning every turn, I think, possibly for the rest of this game. Maybe this is one of those games where Tyler's going to need his teammates to just shut up so that he can do the maths that you've been describing.
All right, this is getting really, really complicated. So right now, Netherlands are on 3 Igneous Elementals, 2 Flame Elementals. Those are the relevant counts for them. Whereas the relevant count for Peru is about to be 4 Glacial Shards, thanks to that Shadow Step pickup. And this hand, which was looking miserable, is now looking absolutely delightful.
Yep, quest is complete, quest is activated, South Sea Deckhand, and a 5 attack Patches going to hop out and just deal with the Flame Elementals, I imagine. You don't really care about the Ignis Elementals anymore, they're frozen, just forget them.
Going face allows... Yeah, Patches has already been played.
Second time today I've made that mistake.
Right, it's because Peru have actually chosen to still include Swashbuckler in the deck, which is not that common these days. So you'd be forgiven, right? You're looking at a hand that has both deck hands in it. You're going, well, of course Patches is still in the deck. But yeah, Peru still choosing to rely on Swashbuckler, which is why they have that Deadly Fork in hand as well. And now, Prep Vanish will complete the quest this turn for Tyler, although the quest itself will not be playable afterwards.
Yeah, that's very difficult.
This completes the quest as well! And it's actually getting done on Igneous Elementals
as well, yeah. And this is where Nandibe may be punished for not getting rid of these Flame Elementals. Now, Prep, activate the quest, trade them in. It looks like Peru is ahead, but Tyler has just flipped that around.
This game has been silly.
It's been complicated.
It has. Hopefully I've kept up.
2 words that are meaning the same thing right now.
15 damage staring down. Stone Tusk Boar in hand is 16. Vanish brings the Stone Tusk Boar back to hand. Sorry, Stone Tusk Boar in hand is 20. Vanish brings the Stone Tusk Boar back to hand. Stone Tusk Boar comes down for 25. So if Peru here do not trade or vanish or make some kind of defensive play, there will be lethal set up for Netherlands, but Peru have many, many options to prevent this from happening.
They're able to charge into the Panda. They're able to put a 5-5 taunt up and a 5-5 without a taunt. That is the true strength of the Bilefin Tidehunter. Deadly Fork is irrelevant, really. I guess it's just a 3-mana 5-5.
This is the other argument behind Swashbuckler. I think the really big point is players realize they did not want to pull Patches from their deck early, as we've seen here. Like, you saw the difference. But then the secondary argument that came alongside that was like, well, Swashbuckler, it's going to give you a spell, and a spell has to compete with like a 5/5 minion for 1 or 2 mana if it's going to be like a good card in my hand. If it gives me a minion, that minion's just going to cost 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 mana. It's just not going to be anywhere near as efficient as the actual cards that I put in my deck.
This play here was very strong because it defends from the charge plus bounce play. Because if the only method you've got for charging is a charge plus even several bounces, doesn't matter. The charge has to trade into the 5/5 with Taunt.
Right.
That being said, Tyler can just say right back at you with the Vanish and actually push some damage to the face. Does that achieve anything, though? It actually gives Nandite more resources because he gets to generate an extra Taunt and gets to keep the one he gets put in his hand.
Yeah, I think the weird way that Netherlands have kind of been forced to play out this game has left them with actually a very slow hand in Quest Rogue terms. Like, at this point in the game, having like 3 3-drops and 2 2-drops in your hand is actually considered quite slow, considering the deck is primarily made up of 1 and 2 mana minions. So the fact that they've just gone off weirdly with Igneous Elementals in this game has actually slowed down their hand in this portion immensely. Glacial Shard is a huge pickup in this spot, though. That is such a massive tempo swing for Netherlands. Probably the best card in their deck they could have drawn in this exact situation.
Yeah, Tyler going for sheer tempo there, choosing not to bounce anything with the Panda. Now he's got a very powerful board. You're looking a little bit puzzled, son.
I just wanted freezing the Taunt as opposed to the other minion. If they were going to trade something, wouldn't you rather they traded the Taunt minion?
Yeah, that's true.
So that you didn't have to make that trade for them on the following turn?
I don't know. I can't explain that.
Often those decisions come down to like which minion you'd like your opponent to bounce, though. So they froze the minion that if it was bounced, which you would like to do because it's frozen, then you don't get the double value out of the Bilefin. Like, if they freeze the Bilefin, then you can go, okay, cool, I'll just take this frozen minion back to my hand, and now I get the double value by replaying it with Battlecry. So it's definitely not cut and dry, but interesting decisions nonetheless.
Oh, now this turn is hard for Tyler. If he's going to Vanish now, he could push 5 damage through first, play the Stone Tusk Bore, push another 5, Vanish, Bore again. That's only 15, though. He's not quite at 25 just yet.
And that's already 7 mana, so Ferryman on the Bore would be the end of his 9. He could not play the Bore again afterwards.
Question is the Vanish a necessity? Because Nandibe is getting very close to just having lethal now. Two minions need to connect to the face, plus the weapon, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, the Vanish value is a little bit weird here, because you definitely want to trade away these taunts. Because you don't want to vanish the board with the taunt still on it, and then give your opponent 3 5/5 taunts the next turn. Right? Because you would give them the 2 actual naturals and the Bilefin back in hand that they can generate 3 5/5s with, so they are just going to try and set up a board state again and really try and push the idea of this Vanish for lethal.
Yeah, freezing seems just as good as trading into here. If Tyler can set up lethal for next turn, it doesn't look like he can.
No, the trade with the Boar means that they are just looking at their hand and going, hey, we have like an Igneous Elemental on the board now and an Igneous Elemental to spare. We will just trade every single turn, and they run out of stuff way before we do.
But it's only going to take Nandibe 1 minion with charge to win this game. Even a bounce would have done it this turn. There was very, very high potential for Nandibe and Peru to just win, but your very disappointed reaction with the preparation was probably mirrored by them.
I mean, let's be real. I'm rooting for Tyler. He's my teammate.
That's true.
Oh,
that's going to do it.
Yep.
Netherlands breaking the curse that's been set up over the last 24 hours, even more than 24 hours, due to the Austria versus Russia game. Tyler looking full of joy and surprise, like he could feel the pressure.
Yeah,
Relief,
sure.
that's the word. As Netherlands take their 3rd win in the Hearthstone Global Games, all but guaranteeing them a spot in Phase 2 of the competition.
That was a really sick Quest Rogue mirror, I have to say. Like, I was not a fan of Quest Rogue in the early days of the expansion. I've said some very nasty things about the deck on Twitter and probably on these broadcasts as well at some point, but I've come around to it a little bit as I've seen better and better players get better and better at the deck itself, and I can kind of see through the nonsense it does to see, you know, some of the power that these these top players can really pull out of the deck when they're playing it well. But that mirror in particular, it was just so out of left field, like Igneous Elemental being used to activate the quest and like coming down to the very, very wire in the end. It wasn't like a one-sided blowout like it quite often is. In the end, Netherlands will be over the moon to have finally, Falcone, put an end to this underdog blowout that we've been seeing so far.
All right, well, we are going to have a chat with Mitsuhide now. Hey, Mitsuhide, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Congratulations for your win. You're now 3 wins in the Hearthstone Global Games and pretty much guaranteed through to the next phase in the competition. How are you feeling?
Feeling really great. Like, towards the end in the last game, the suspense was really getting, I was super stressed about that. So yeah, very happy.
Yeah, talk to me about that last Quest Road game just for a second, because like at what point did you decide you were completing on Igneous Elementals? Because I was like counting like the total mana cost to complete on Igneous and complete on Flame Elemental, and was it like a last minute decision when you got that final bounce, or were you planning to do it that way the whole time, or like what happened that game?
Yeah, so we knew we already played 3 and we needed only 1 bounce to do it. And yeah, in the end it planned out pretty well, I would say, with the prep quest.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it just we didn't want to do it with Igneous Elemental, of course, but it was the best option.
I want to know a little bit about what your communication was like, specifically during the last game. There was a lot of complicated turns, a lot of complicated maths going on. Was there a point where you just had to kind of step back and let Tyler take control, or was it a team effort all the way through?
It was a team effort, but especially in the last game, we decided to just not say anything when we didn't have anything good to say.
Yep.
So that the people who were really experienced with Quest Rogue, like Tyler, could talk more about their decisions and stuff.
Right.
Because otherwise it would get too messy if everyone was just talking.
Well, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Do you have like specific like allocated roles on your team, like one guy who's like focused on hand reads or like tracking the decks or anything like that, or do you all just kind of just throw in input when you have it?
We all kind of do it. Like hand reads is mostly Theo who does it, but yeah, okay. Everybody just says what he thinks is right at that moment.
Fair enough. Well, congratulations one more time. Go and celebrate your win. Thank you for your time, man.
Well played, guys.
Yes. Well, there you go. As we keep saying, curse broken. The popular team wins. Not feeling so great for Peru now, who are 0-2 in the group. They're going to have to work very, very hard to progress to the next phase of the competition, though it is still possible for them.
Yeah, recapping the series here, this was perhaps the one play that maybe could have made or break this game for Netherlands. You can see how relieved, how delighted Peru were with this top deck consecration, that they felt like maybe got them a chance. But the way the game panned out, you have to say maybe Netherlands just judged this perfectly. Yeah. They said, okay, we can take the opportunity to win the game right now on the spot. If a quality consecration happens, we still have enough gas with High Main and co. And this is a turn we all made a big mess out of by forgetting that the Direwolf could charge, forgetting that Coin Hungry Crab could come out, but in the end it did turn out to be the perfect lethal, or just one over with the Hungry Crab getting buffed by the Wolf as well. Yeah, just such a great setup there from Tice. Even with the Equality Consecration coming, the Big Bad Wolf stayed on the board. Savannah High Main, as you said, still coming out next turn, and a very, very quick win after that. I wonder, that little pause before Coin Hungry Crab happened. Did he forget as well? I wonder whether Netherlands knew that was lethal the whole time. From Tice's face expression there. Can we get Mitsuhide back just to double check? It looked like there was a bit of a, oh yeah, all right. Oh yeah, he's dead. Sweet. I mean, they were looking strong even if it wasn't lethal that time, regardless. Next up was the Jade Druid, which wasn't quite able to take it long enough into the late game to get complete board dominance. Yeah, Innovate Fandral into Feral Rage, into Wrath Wild Growth, and then their 3-1 Fandral had to take an entire turn to get consecrated from the Paladin, and the Paladin still just did this to them afterwards. Yeah, pretty devastating. Paladin's pretty good, guys. I don't know if you knew that. It's a strong deck. It's strong, not so strong against an entourage of Hungry Crabs that are going to be appearing in playoffs, but finally, this was the last game, and what a game it was. So much maths on both sides. Quest completed by a 3-drop for the second time today. Igneous Elemental. This one actually won, though. Doing the work and actually winning it in the mirror. Am I right in thinking both quests were completed on turn 7 there?
statistically, that's quite late to be completing the quest.
And I think I've made this point a few times over the last couple of days, but I think you will need to get used to that kind of thing happening. I think as time goes on, just maybe one turn later than you might be expecting. Like, the average turn completion might just get pushed up by one as these slightly slower builds with Tar Creepers start to come into play, and also as players just appreciate that just fighting for the board for a turn or two, there's nothing wrong with that. You can take your time. The quest wins the game no matter when you complete it.
I mean, especially against the more aggressive decks, if you're able to just control the board, it doesn't really matter if the quest is complete a turn later. Let's have one last look at Group B there. Netherlands, well and truly on top with a 10-5 game record, matching USA.
Do you know what's looking just a little bit scary about this group, Falcone?
What is it, the 4th place team?
It's the fact that first and second are looking to be pretty well locked up at this point. So there are 4 very accomplished countries fighting it out for one final spot. Maybe Romania are just out of the running right now. Maybe Peru have got a little bit too much to do at this point. So maybe the story of Group B at this point is the United Kingdom and Thailand just scrapping it out for that 3rd place position.
Yeah, that's going to be a tough one. We can't be too biased about it, but of course,
definitely can.
We do have our favourite there in the United Kingdom as we take one last look at the games today. The day of the underdog, as I'm going to refer to it forevermore. Belgium defeating Denmark, Israel toppling Finland, and then Belarus just destroying Germany.
And that game, that series, I don't even want to mention what's noteworthy about it. If you haven't seen it, if you saw it, I don't need to remind you, you remember. If you haven't seen it, go back and watch the VOD, and I am not going to spoil a thing for you. Just go do that.
Well, it's 3-0, that much is spoiled.
Yeah, but there are some finer points and details that were made that series particularly spectacular.
Brazil overcame Sweden, the Team Alliance, including ex-world champion plus Show, and finally, breaking the curse, Netherlands come through and defeated Peru. What a day of Hearthstone it's been.
Yeah, it was awesome. I think, particularly the usage of Warlock decks in a couple of the series were definitely very noteworthy, and as you said,
Dirty Rat in the zoo was...
ruined it.
Darn it, that's what you meant by spoilers.
I tried so hard, guys. Yeah, but the Dirty Rat in the zoo.
I mean, saying Dirty Rat in the zoo, surely that just entices people to watch.
That's probably a fair point, but you can see now, going into tomorrow, our week does not end. We hand over to our North American broadcast partners. I like saying that. It makes it sound very official.
It is official.
Yeah, our North American broadcast partners will be taking over for some of the games that want to be played in a North American time zone. So United States will re-enter the fray against Thailand, and us, as proud British people, will be rooting for a United States resounding victory to crush Thailand and make sure that the United Kingdom can move into control of 3rd place in that group. And then Taiwan.
And I am very glad that you're back for it, even though it was a ton of fun to get to cast with TJ.
That is a dream for all of us, is casting with TJ. Few get to live it. Let's go ahead and take a look at the format for the Hearthstone Global Games. Again, at week 6, we are more than halfway through stage 1. That's 8 groups of 6 teams in a 10-week round robin. Next up will be stage 2, where we have 6 groups of 4 teams, a 3-week round robin. The name of the game, though, is stage 3 with that 16-team single elimination, with the top 4 advancing to the land finals. So, yeah, more than halfway through stage 1. It's been a wild ride thus far. Looking forward to seeing what other teams can go ahead and stamp their ticket into stage 2.
Yeah, it's an absolute marathon of a tournament, but we are slowly but surely making our way through stage 1, and we actually have some teams already that have secured their spots in stage 2 of this tournament.
Yeah, going ahead and looking at them, from Europe, we have Bulgaria, Netherlands, Italy, Ukraine, and Czech Republic. I gotta say, coming into this, I didn't expect Bulgaria to be one of these powerhouse teams, but they are not a mild team, Cora. They are a Buffalo wild team.
No, that is a blazing statement, Rob. Yeah, I don't think anybody really expected Bulgaria to be right up at the top, but they certainly are.
Yeah, they're joined by, from the Americas, it's the USA at 3-0, Canada also at 3-0, both of these teams with perfect records. Argentina, though, has also qualified, so shout out to LATAM. They've been bringing it. From Asia Pacific, we have South Korea. That is the team Raven pick, so hats off to Raven. But more importantly, hats off to South Korea. Yeah, so looking at these teams, is there anything that necessarily stands out to you as maybe a little bit unexpected?
Well, Bulgaria and Italy, I would have to say, are the two unexpecteds that stand out really at the top for me. Other than that, it's a lot of strong names, a lot of professional players from these countries that I think we expected to make it out of their groups and do very well. And it is only week 6, so these are just the teams that have really gotten those records that ensure that they're through to stage 2. We're still going to be seeing, 24 total countries make it through to the second stage. So this is just a couple.
Yeah, although with some of these teams qualifying, you can start to maybe get your dark horse picks for super fandom. You can go out and get your Morgalad t-shirts, your best Udyr EU posters. So there is that opportunity to kind of go ahead and claim your teams now that we're starting to get more towards the end of stage 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Things are starting to form, and we're starting to figure out who is actually going to be the top 3 of each of these groups. So it's nice to see how it's developed over time. We've still got 4 more weeks, however, to see where we're going to end up before stage 2 kicks off.
Yeah, we actually have 4 more matches, though, tonight. Let's go, 2 more matches, 4 more teams. That almost worked. Take a look at who we have, though. It is going to be Thailand at 1-1, taking on the United States with a 3-0 record. And then the second match of the evening is going to be Taiwan with a 1-1 record, taking on Vietnam with a similar 1-1 record. So, as we said, the United States is already through the group stages, but for Taiwan and Vietnam, there's a lot going on in that group where there's already 2 teams through. They still have the opportunity to get stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. That's going to be our closer match of the day, I would have to say. This first match, Thailand versus the United States. U.S. is through already. Everybody knows the names of these United States players, but let's check out exactly who is from Thailand. It's going to be Another C, Patoyao, Viper Pro, and Mach Gi up against Amnesiac, Dog, Firebat, and Hot Meowth. We actually saw Thailand on broadcast in week 1, I believe, and United States obviously has been just kicking their way through this tournament with a 3-0 record so far.
Yeah, Thailand came out in week 1. They went through and they lost 2-3, so it was very close. They actually won those first 2 games. They made a great series out of it, but they weren't able to get the win. Did manage to pick up the game or the win though in week 2. So congratulations to them again, bringing them to 1-1. It's really 0-2. You don't necessarily want to fall down to even have the teams at 0-3 right now, but Thailand still very much in it. But yeah, to your point, United States came in here, they have a very competitive pedigree. They have 4 players who are very familiar with tournament settings, very familiar with the highest echelon of tournament experience. And, they've really shown that coming in. And, I just want to brag, North America, 2 3-0 teams.
Yeah, that's very exciting. And obviously we're a bit biased, but I recognize these monuments, so that's exciting for me because I am not geographically knowledgeable.
Yeah, I do want to say, most of the time when we're seeing those videos, we see things we're like, wow, that looks really pretty.
Beautiful. I wonder what that is.
Like, look it up, oh, it's Machu Picchu. But that one is like, oh,
Grand
Canyon. Yeah. So, going to be a tall task, though, for Thailand this week, going up against Amnesiac and the rest of the United States team. We actually had a chance to sit down with Amnesiac and get his thoughts coming into this week.
My name is Amnesiac, and I can give you a young savage guarantee that the USA will win the Hearthstone Global Games. I think the Team USA does a really good job of kind of understanding what each person brings to the table. We kind of understand who's best at what and where we can get certain input from some people versus certain input from others. So I think that helps us gel as a team really well. When it comes to team prep, we sort of have 2 camps. I'd say that Dog and Firebat are sort of our idea people. You see Dog when he's streaming and Firebat when they're streaming. They like to play kind of off the wall. So that brings something interesting to the table when it comes to prep, and they'll notice things that I wouldn't even think of. So that's really valuable. Whereas I'd say that Hot Meowth and I, when it comes to prep, we're like the textbook people. We're looking at data, we're building decks, we've tested things. We're much more by the book. Whereas Dog and Firebat sort of bring that wild flair that really makes you like a good team. I think it's really exciting that Blizzard is pushing more than one format. Irrespective of if this format is good or bad, I think it's just good that we have more of them. It makes people think, and it gives people more room to innovate. The biggest stereotype I've noticed because everyone thinks we just like cheeseburgers, but we are diverse in what we like in fast food. We like cheeseburgers, a quick pizza's nice. We're pretty big into burritos over here. It kind of bothers me. We like our fast food, but we're not uncultured savages, guys. Come on.
Yeah, so let's go and take a look at the match format for series number 1 here. It is going to be Thailand versus the United States. Core, if your mouth's not full, why don't you walk us through the Hearthstone Global Games format?
All right, so it's going to be a standard best-of-5 Conquest blind pick, but each of these 4 players have 2 dedicated classes to their names. And then if it comes down to game number 5, it is going to be one of the players having to make a repeat performance. So hopefully they've gotten a snack by then, because it could be a long match in that case. And they will then have the choice between the deck that they did not play previously in this match, as well as that Black Sheep 9th class, which I'm actually kind of surprised to see isn't Warlock this week.
Yeah, and I want to point out again, if you are chosen to be the ace player for your team to participate in that ace match, again, that is the match that decides the whole series. So your team has a lot of trust in you, even though it is by committee, to let you ultimately be at the steering wheel. You are the big burrito of your team if you get to actually be the ace player. And Amnesiac, no surprise, when I see Amnesiac, the first thing I think is, not young Seth, just big burrito.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
that's definitely it.
Not surprising to see him there. Viper Pro, obviously the pick for Thailand. We do have the picks in for our first match, so let's go ahead and take a look at that. So another C going to be on Druid, and Dog also going to be on Druid. So right now, Druid, fun fact, is actually the most represented class, and you should know this for this weekend, Cora, for the Europe Spring Playoffs. So Druid getting a lot of love right now. Has 2 major archetypes, the more aggressive version and then the Jade Druid. Now, even the aggressive version has a lot of different tech choices. That list is very much kind of still not yet refined, and people are shifting it on a person-to-person basis. But yeah, going to be very interesting to see what these guys are choosing to bring.
Yeah, it absolutely will be. I think that Jade Druid is more represented in the Hearthstone global games, so I would expect to see Jade Druid,
Sure.
especially when you're pairing it with a Warlock as your second class, because it's fairly likely that you're not going to pick the Warlock. I think Europe Spring Playoffs, 0% of the players actually brought a Warlock deck, so I would imagine we'd be seeing some Jade Druids here, but leave it to the United States to change things up and maybe bring something a bit unusual. Dog does like to play control decks, however.
Yeah, we see Dog there chilling in his room, wearing a shirt. He's on comms with the rest of his team. Now, another Z, gonna go ahead and have some company there. The rest of the team likely on voice comms so they can all communicate, come up with the best lines of play. Dog obviously has a wealth of knowledge to draw from with the rest of the American squad. And Amnesiac was talking about how it's a true committee approach and everyone kind of brings their own strengths. And that may not necessarily be something you expect with 4 very dominant personalities on the team.
I like how he even makes a skeleton wear a shirt.
It's important to wear a shirt. You can't just not wear a shirt. That's just, well, first off, it's illegal to be a Twitch. So
it is. That's true.
We would all get in a lot of trouble as much as, the dog shirtless meme is a good one.
But regardless of that, yeah, it's absolutely, this is not going to be just, an absolute wash for the USA. Thailand has come into this tournament and proven that they are really fantastic at communication, and although they did lose their first match in week 1, it was very close. So they are by no means just a team to write off, although the USA on paper is definitely the stronger team. And here we're going to see an aggro druid for the US, and Thailand looking like Jade.
Yeah, it appears to be a pirate's life for Doggo. So he's going to be playing those early minions. We see the Mark of Yasharaj, which tells us there is a little bit more of that beast synergy going on. Mark of Yasharaj, obviously a very important card now. When it comes to this, because you don't know what each class is playing, the mulligans are a little bit weird because you're not necessarily sure what you're mulliganing against. Now, that said, for the aggro druid, the name of the game is just pretty much get that early curve, get maybe one of those buffs, look for the innervate, so just play out those cheap early minions. You're going ahead and progressing an agenda that you don't necessarily need to worry as much about what you're playing against because you have one speed, which is murder people. But if you're the Jade Druid, you obviously might be thinking, okay, do I necessarily want to mulligan for removal? Do I want to be able to deal with an early bird? An early board, Swipe and Wrath can help you do that.
Yeah, there's not much that the aggro druid can really do aside from their regular game plan, which, like you put so nicely, is murder people.
Yep.
So you just got a mulligan for the early game. With Jade Druid, you pretty much always need to go for that ramp, but maybe you give an extra consideration to, is it worth keeping a swipe in the mulligan, or do I need to just stick to my Jade Druid plan? Because if you keep a swipe, then you're on the back foot if it were a Jade Druid mirror.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about the way Jade Druid functions these days. They have the ability to generate so much armor, so much HP. They have the big taunts and Primordial Drake, Jade Behemoth. So if the aggro druid doesn't win out early, it's very difficult for them to win out in the mid game. Yes, they have Living Mana, they have Savage Roar, that certainly gives them some more reach, but it is very difficult for the aggro druid to actually close it out if they don't win, say, usually before turn 7 or 8.
Yeah, that's a great point. But it is a very well-equipped deck to win, usually by turn 6, I would have to say. If you have a living mana on 5, then the game's usually over right after that, especially against Jade Druid, who has no form of AoE, except for the Primordial Drake, which you would need either ramp in the early game or an Innervate to be able to get out to counter an on-curve living mana. So it is going to be tough for Thailand if the US has that early game, which they do. The Innervate Vicious Fledgling is probably the strongest turn 1 play in this Druid deck, but hard countered by Wrath. So is it even worth it to go for it, or do you wait until you can mark the Fledgling right away?
If memory serves, Another Z did keep a card. So if he kept the card, you have to think like, okay, what are you going to keep in this situation? And Wrath certainly stands out for the reason you just listed, because if Vicious Fledgling goes unchecked, it actually is just a haymaker. That card can just single-handedly win games. It is extremely powerful, and if Mark of Yasiraj is also in hand, it can just, frankly, get out of hand extremely quickly. But we are probably just going to go ahead and see, after some deliberation, that Wrath come out. Although, I will say, you could just Innervate out Fandral. That is certainly something which, based on what you're seeing on the board, would certainly check it based on stats alone. Obviously, Vicious Fledgling, to get the buffs it does, has to hit the face.
It does.
Yeah. So there's a big consideration, but I like this from Another Z. Just go ahead, play it safe. That Vicious Fledgling can be such a thorn in the side. I really just like clearing it.
Yeah, it's priority number 1. And essentially, your Wrath is getting rid of the US's Innervate plus Vicious Fledgling. Those are 2 really valuable resources that you're cutting down with just 1 card. And now your curve is looking pretty reasonable from this point out. So Thailand had a very good start to be able to combat what the US was going in with this aggro Druid.
I want to point out, too, Dog, when he played the Vicious Fledgling, he also went ahead and spent the mana to play down the Enchanted Raven because he had Mark of Yasiraj in hand. So even if the Wrath comes out, there's realistically very few combinations of anything, unless there's, just a random claw in there somewhere that is going to result in both of those minions being dead. So kind of hedged his bets a little bit, was able to get the Mark of Yasiraj. That's going to give him some sorely needed card draw. But yeah, to your point earlier, Another Z and Thailand have just had the answers thus far early. And this is one of those things, as a deck, Aggro Druid is a lot less, compared to other decks, about making these big decisions that kind of guide the way your game is going to go. You pretty much have 1 speed as Aggro Druid, and if that win condition doesn't work, then you realistically have problems.
Yeah, there's not a lot of deviating that you can really do from your game plan. Obviously, we see the Murloc package in Dog's list. That's going to indicate Finja, double Bluegills, double War Leaders. Pretty standard, aggressive Murloc package, which gives you that little bit extra reach. But if Dog doesn't put on some serious pressure very quickly, like you said, they're going to have problems. It's not going to be enough damage adding up, especially against Jade Druid, which can, in some cases, double their total health with Feral Rage and Earthen Scales, as well as have a few hefty taunt minions to really throw the US off their plan.
Right, so we see here the Fandral coming out, and again, just based on the stats on the board, like this checks the War Leader pretty evenly.
Yeah.
And the consideration was also there that you could have innervated out the Jade Behemoth, but it's a 3/6 with taunt, and then you get a 1/1, so goes ahead and just plays a Fandral, conserves the Innervate. Is going to get, I don't necessarily want to say punished, but there is a favorable trade for Dog with that second Mark of Yasiraj, foregoing the card draw that he would have gotten for attaching it to a beast.
Yeah, it's a favorable trade for Dog, but giving up that card draw for Aggro Druid is a really big deal. They run out of resources very quickly, as most of their minions are very small, and don't do a lot on their own. You really need to combine them with those buff cards to actually be able to put on any real pressure. So the fact that now all of Dog's resources up until this point have been checked pretty efficiently by Another C. Another C is going to ramp this turn likely, and then Dog is going to be left without essential resources. That 1 card deeper into his deck maybe could have solved that problem. Maybe it was a Finja, something that could have put him very strong onto the board.
Okay, well, this is kind of a scary point now for Thailand. Leaving these minions up on the board, there is a lot of pressure there, and yes, you are ramping into some big turns. The Primordial Drake is a big deal. You can automatically advance to that if need be via that Innervate, but you are leaving a fair amount of damage on the board, which is always scary against the Aggro Druid because of Savage Roar.
Yeah, that Paw of the Wild pickup was actually huge because it's going to put all 3 of Dog's minions out of Primordial Drake range, assuming he uses it as a buff.
Yeah, the problem with playing the Hungry Crab there is he would have obviously gotten rid of his own War Leader.
Mm-hmm.
So, unfortunately,
You don't get to choose whether or not to destroy a Murloc. You just have to destroy a Murloc. So,
War Leader
bit
would have
unfortunate.
gotten the Stabbo there from the Crabbo.
That's just too bad. You miss out on a 2-3, but an unshivved War Leader does reign on the board.
I think it's more important to just keep the War Leader in check. So Dog is putting up the pressure now, and he's essentially saying, okay, if you don't play something with a taunt, if you don't generate hell, I have this with the Savage Roar. So Dog putting himself in a good position. It's going to be on Thailand to kind of make the read here, although based on what they have as actual options, it is essentially either you're playing the Jade Behemoth or you're playing the Primordial Drake. So certainly narrow list of options, but both of them are going to be pretty helpful.
Yeah, I mean, they are both reasonable, but you don't... It's just a really poor position to be in, right? Because if you Jade Behemoth, it's automatically getting checked on board by the War Leader, and you don't know what Dog has in hand to be able to push damage through that, and then the Drake isn't clearing off either of these minions, so again, automatically getting checked at least on board, but maybe that's just good enough right now. That's also a pretty good draw.
I was going to say, speaking of good enough now, this is one of those things when we were talking about the decision point between Jade Behemoth and Primordial Drake. Dog and USA are starting to get to that point where the way they're going to win this game is probably if they don't win it with the early pressure they've generated off of the back of Living Mana.
Yeah.
And Primordial Drake is obviously just such an incredible counter. It's just, that's it. Get off my board, Living Mana. You're not wanted here. So another reason to go with that Jade Behemoth line is to save the Primordial Drake. Obviously, you have it on the next turn. And then if a Living Mana does come down, then you can deal with it.
So Dog with the Savage Roar this turn would actually have 11 damage with a hero power, so just shy of actually being able to kill Thailand straight out this turn. And the Living Mana gets heavily checked by the Primordial Drake in Thailand's hand.
But again, I mentioned it earlier, the aggro druid doesn't necessarily have too many cheeky decisions it can make to kind of go and say like, okay, well, I'm going to try to juke my opponent a little bit. You basically are there, especially against the Jade Druid, you have to just probably play the Living Mana pretty soon here. Dog now going to go ahead and push a fair bit of damage. He's going to set his opponent down to 2. And then we'll kind of see what happens from there. But nope, going ahead and trading there. And that's actually, I don't know what I'm thinking there. That actually protects the War Leader, so.
Yeah. You haven't seen a Wrath since that first Wrath, which means there's likely no removal in Thailand's hand. Otherwise, you probably would have seen it, because it would have been a bit safer than at least the Jade Behemoth on turn 5. So now the Primordial Drake can come down. It doesn't kill the War Leader, but the War Leader doesn't automatically kill it. The question is then, you are really setting yourself up for failure if Living Mana is in Dog's hand.
Yeah, that is a big consideration. So a lot for Thailand to look over. It's just innervate out that Yogg, but probably not looking very good. It's a very few number of spells there.
You say that until you Moonglade Portal your face 3 times.
I mean, look, you can't Moonglade your portal you can't Moonglade your face with Yogg if you never played the Yogg.
That's true. That's just science, bro.
That is a 101 Hearthstone philosophy.
It's a good thing we had that brain food.
I gotta
Now
say
you're thinking.
that snack energized me. All right, so the Primordial Drake does come down.
Look at that smile on Dog's face.
It's like my Living Mana. It's gonna keep living.
Staying alive.
All right, well, that said, this is still a situation. Okay, so Patches, coming off the Bloodsail Corsair, will actually allow for the clear of the Primordial Drake.
Not if you want to play
Living Mana.
the Living Mana as well, which I think is just a necessity this turn. Question is, do you want to trade in the War Leader? You really get dumpstered by a second Primordial Drake with only 4 cards in hand for another seed.
Yeah, I mean, this is...
Maybe it's not too likely.
For the aggro druid, this is definitely hedging on the, okay, it's time to make that final push, and we'll see what happens. Could just trade in the 6 damage to the Primordial Drake, restock the board. When you actually are dealing with the Living Mana, it's one of those things where the way you deal with those actual minions is not as straightforward as it would be for other minions where you're just killing them to get them off the board. You now understand that Dog is going to go into the next turn with 1 mana, but again, it feels like you have to deal with these.
Yeah. And important to note, Dog attacked with the hero power because Living Mana takes all of your mana. It does not just take mana that you have not yet used. So Dog had 7 mana, although he used a certain amount of it. Living Mana still then destroyed those crystals and made 7 minions for him. So that's actually an interaction that I think is pretty notable here.
I had a fun time when Living Mana first came out, learning about all the different interactions. Obviously, Innervate.
Yeah.
That was a point that I was like, but I got 2 mana crystals, and it's like, well, no, you didn't actually. So a lot of interaction points with this, but for Thailand, there's only one interaction point, and that's how do we not die here? The swipe off the top, it is area of effect, which area of effect certainly helps against Living Mana, but it is the area of effect portion of it is so small and really not much of a consideration that it's probably just time to innervate, jam out that Yogg-Saron. We see excitement for Team Thailand as this comes down. Okay, well, again, the Yogg didn't really have much in terms of juice to work with based on those spells, and yeah, we're going to see Dog just go ahead and close it out. Yogg-Saron was actually pretty friendly to the Living Mana, so thanks, Yogg.
Power Tentacles, Hand of Protection. I don't know. That's not the Yogg-Sarons that I like to see, Rob. But fortunately, that is our Yogg reality now, and USA is going to go up 1-0, taking that Druid Mirror pretty convincingly. Although Another Sea in Thailand did have a lot of those early removals and ramp to be able to combat the early minion pressure from USA, and unfortunately it wasn't enough because Living Mana is just an absolute powerhouse if you've already used that Drake. So.
Yeah, and Dog and Team USA navigated that well again. This is really a deck aggro druid that feasts on those kind of situations where the decks get a slower start. So yeah, thank you. I've been reading some books lately. We see there up on the screen that is going to be a point for the United States. Up next, we're going to have Maki versus Amnesiac. Maki on the Warrior, Amnesiac on the Rogue. Now, Warrior and Rogue are the two classes that in the most recent weeks have kind of stayed about where they were in terms of who's playing what. The Warrior, we're tending to see the Quest Warrior. On ladder, you probably run into more Pirate Warrior just because it's more time efficient generally to be playing Pirate Warrior if you're just trying to rank up and get those stars. But Rogue, still seeing a lot of Quest Rogue, see the occasional Miracle with the Arcane Giants, Sherazin, Corpse Flower. But yeah, those two classes are basically in the same spot. And these two players, however, Maki and Amnesiac, are pretty much night and day.
Yes.
Maki is, he competes in smaller cups, like he's starting to get that competitive experience, but obviously Amnesiac is a the guy's 16, extremely storied member of the Hearthstone competitive.
Yeah, he has taken a leadership role on Team USA that I think is largely to do with why they're having so much success right now, just because Amnesiac is such an incredible player. So obviously if Maki has a Pirate Warrior and Amnesiac is playing Quest Rogue, then it is favored towards the Warrior, but like you said, some of those Miracle Rogues have been sneaking in.
Yeah.
And Taunt Warrior, while it was sort of the flavor of the month last month, we're still definitely seeing a little bit here in the Hearthstone global games. So gonna need to see exactly what archetypes these guys brought, but very different players as a whole.
Now, the last time we saw the United States, Amnesiac did bring that Quest Rogue, and he joked saying that when he submitted it, he talked to the team and he just basically said like, oh yeah, I'd only played like 10 games of it. I'm just going to jam it out there. And ended up winning. This was in the series against Romania, but it was a very close one. This is the closest experience they've had in all of the Hearthstone global games thus far. It ultimately came down to a patches off the top. Crystal Core was active. That's a 5 health, 5 attack minion with charge. So it was close, and very curious to see if they're going to bring that same deck, Amnesiac, again, pilot.
I mean, Amnesiac is... you joke about Amnesiac having said that he only played 10 games with the deck, but Amnesiac he's pretty much an expert at every deck that he plays. I wouldn't expect him to bring a deck that he isn't familiar with, especially when, Dog played so much Quest Rogue right at the beginning of Ungoro and actually hit rank 1 legend with it. So I'm guessing there's a method to the madness, and Amnesiac knows what he's doing here. And obviously with the Warrior on Another Sea's side, for Amnesiac to pick the Rogue, he has to have taken that into account, right? You have to look at that Warrior and think, if this is Pirates, I need to have an edge to my game plan to be able to overcome this, and it's going to be Miracle Rogue. I think this really speaks a lot to Amnesiac's planning as far as lineups in this tournament.
Yeah, and in general, Amnesiac, probably more so than any of the other players, I've had the opportunity to get to know, is very much that sort of person where, if you expect one thing from him, he'll throw another thing at you just to kind of mess with you.
Mr.
Yeah, he's very, I would say, the mental acuity of this kid, to me, is like right up there. Saddle just recently mentioned how impressive Shtanu Dachi is, and while I completely agree, I think Shtanu Dachi, Amnesiac, and guys like Dog, the way in which they think about the game and the speed with which they think about is going to be very much required, because that is not the sort of opening hand you want to see as the Miracle Rogue player.
No, it certainly is not. Vilespine Slayer is a very strong card, but not against a bunch of pirates that are going to kill you before turn 5. Maybe the saving grace is that Maki did draw the patches in the opening hands. That might provide a little bit more time for the United States, but you got to find something in your early game to be able to combat those pirates.
Yeah, I mean, there's, we talk about, patches in the opening hand or drawing patches, that's suboptimal, but Amnesiac's hand, prior to the backstab draw is pretty much, on turn 1, are you just considering prepping out the Mimic Pod just because you need to draw more cards?
I mean,
you have nothing else in your hand.
Else to prep. My other consideration would be, is coin hero power
Sure.
really that valuable? You could prep Mimic Pod, coin hero power on the back foot, but then your Vile Spines, which are already so heavy in your hand, will continue to be very difficult for you to play with the removal of that coin.
I mean, pass, just do nothing is also an option here. And
it is.
If your opponent is playing patches on the first turn, then what you know is there's no Dazas first mate. There's a good chance that the Salsi deckhand is probably being saved if it's there for the buff it gets, obviously charge when a weapon is equipped. So for Amnesiac, he's not facing down a ton of pressure. And that prep is certainly a big tool should something a little more powerful come along.
Yeah, absolutely. It is also a tool to combine with Edwin Van Cleef or Sheraz and Corpse Flower, which are two very strong minions, obviously, that you use to pressure the Pirate Warrior back, which is very difficult to do, but something that is absolutely essential in the early game that usually you would like to accomplish with cards like Swashbuckler, but when you don't have those in hand, you need to get a little bit creative.
Now, in general, Pirate Warrior is one of the premier decks for ending the lives of rogues. It's,
yes.
We've seen it rise in popularity, especially as Quest Rogue has taken off, because it so elegantly does what Quest Rogue doesn't want it to do most of the time, which is hit them in the face until their 30 health is 0. As the rogue player, being in a situation where you're playing against a hyper-aggressive deck, what do you actually think you need to be kind of looking for with the deck as far as your condition? Because my gut just tells me you're hoping to tempo out, possibly a preparation into Fan of Knives, get some tempo going, get something out there. But what do you do at this point if you're Amnesiac with this hand?
I mean, it's a really tough spot. It's a good thing that he didn't prep Mimic Pod, because 2 copies of Gadgetson in hand would be twice as useless. The Razor Petal Lasher maybe could start to pull some things together for Amnesiac, but it's still a little bit messy. You wish you had Eviscerate at this point. You wish you had something that you could play on the board to try to challenge whatever Maki may throw out on the following turn. But
I mean,
no such luck, really.
He can use a Razor Petal Lasher to go ahead and deal with the Frothing Berserker. Unfortunately, because Backstab has to be used first, and Amnesiac's going to take some damage, but this is something, and honestly, as Pirate Warrior starts go, this one is not necessarily as explosive as some of the other ones you can see. So Amnesiac has to be feeling a little bit okay, because if he starts running into the mid-game minions, that Vile Spring Slayer is actually going to be pretty huge in terms of what I was talking about earlier. Getting that tempo. Remove a minion, generate a minion, start pressing your own agenda. The drawback, of course, is that this deck that Amnesiac is piloting for United States doesn't have heals. It really doesn't have taunt. You might see the one-odd Tar Creeper, which somehow slips into a lot of different decks, but yeah, that's pretty much going to be it.
Yeah, Vile Spine actually is pretty reasonable here. It does need to be comboed to get the Battlecry Destroy a minion, but with Coin Vile Spine, that means that Amnesiac can at least kill off one of these minions and put some pressure on the board. Unfortunately for him, 3/4 body challenges pretty much everything that the Pirate Warrior is going to put out. It is a very low life total, however, and like you said, no taunts, no healing. You can only try to stave off the aggression so much before Maki is just going to continue to ignore you and then eventually kill you.
I want to point out right now, Maki has 15 points of damage between all the cards on the board in hand, so he really just needs to find 2 more, and because Amnesiac's playing a deck that doesn't regenerate health at all or block damage, it's very much going to be an uphill struggle, and what it's going to require for Amnesiac to win is over the course of basically like the next 2 turns to put together a scenario where he wins. And yeah, looking at what he has, I really can't see too much daylight for him, even though, he has the Vile Spine Slayer to continue to clear what is the Pirate Warrior mid-game.
Yeah. No, there's not much. Obviously, at this stage in the game, the Rogue would like to be setting up for an explosive Gadgets and Auctioneer turn, along with that prep Mimic Pod that could draw Amnesiac very deep into his deck. But if you don't deal with this board, you're dead in 2 turns, so
okay,
there's not much to do.
This is good news, though. You can backstab, prep out the Fan of Knives.
You don't have backstab, Rob.
Wait, imaginary
Backstab would be
backstab.
awesome right here.
Imaginary
You're totally
backstab
right, Rob.
that I'm making up. Yeah. We'll be able to at least deal with the Corcoran Elite. Again, still facing down damage. The good news for Amnesiac is the last swing of that boosted axe did go into the minion, so Thailand choosing to trade there. When did I even see a backstab? Sometimes you just want
Rob.
things to be there bad enough.
You want the rogue to have a chance against the pirate warrior, so you imagine they have backstabs and hope that they appear, but
yeah,
no such luck. Maki just needs to find one more damage source to be able to close this game out on the next turn. And Amnesiac's been playing from the back foot this entire time and does not really have cards in his deck to be able to put himself in a beneficial position. So, looks like this is going to go in favor of Thailand. Unless you can pull a Swashbuckler off the top and get something miraculous.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what it's going to take. Even if Maki doesn't close it out on the next turn, that weapon obviously represents 2 damage over 2 turns, so yeah, Amnesiac gonna sit here, talk to the rest of the guys on Team United States and try to figure out if there is anything that seems like a really intuitive play. Probably starts with that Gadgetzan, though, and we're gonna see the Gadgetzan, the coin come out. We might even see the fabled Gadgetzan coin concede.
I don't know, Rob. That's a lot to hope for, especially since the US isn't dead yet. I suppose there is a world that we live in where Thailand could whiff on their draw, be 1 damage off a lethal, and the US could provide enough counter pressure to win the next turn. But I'm not entirely sure how that would happen.
I was going to say, it's pretty much the situation where if Maki didn't draw damage, and obviously Pirate Warrior is a deck that's just full of a lot of direct damage, the Heroic Strikes, the Mortal Strikes, second Corcoran Leroy, I mean, you name it, it's basically just like half the deck, these things that immediately do damage, so...
On any given turn, 50-50 for lethal.
Yeah, so doesn't draw it here, but again, Amnesiac, if he wants to win this, is either going to have to find a way to block damage, or piece together lethal on this turn. That's coming up, so... Again, tall order. We did see Amnesiac choose to conserve the coin, so starting next turn, he will be able to start drawing things. He has the Cold Blood. He can start to piece together damage. But again, 29 health for Thailand. I mean, what series of draws? We see 7 damage on the board.
4 in hand from the Cold Blood. No Wind Fury effects. I'm not seeing where Amnesiac can find an additional 18 damage from the deck. Yeah, it's like Swashbuckler or bust here, pretty much. Fortunately, Amnesiac does have a lot of chances to be able to draw it.
I wonder if it's even in the deck. We see the Violet Teacher there. That's not something that is always included these days.
No, it's not.
In the Arcane Giants. We tend to, with the Arcane Giants build specifically. All right, Leroy, obviously a lot of damage, but asking a lot from the deck.
Yeah, we saw 21.
Amnesiac hasn't broken the game. You see the 3 SI agents because of the Mimic Pod, so...
Razor Petal Lasher. Yeah, it's possible that Swashbucklers just are not actually in the deck. And though Amnesiac does pick up quite a bit of damage, it is not going to be enough. And the mere upgrade is going to close out this game, but Amnesiac chooses to concede. And that is going to be a tied score. Thailand picking up their first win of this series.
Yeah, we see Thailand really excited about the win. Maki doing, I think that's a W. I think that's a winner. I don't know.
Could be a W.
Whatever the kids are hip to doing these days. But we now have a tie series on our hand, 1-1. So, you know, I mentioned it during that game right there. But Pirate Warrior is really designed to destroy decks like that. So that is not, you know, necessarily something that totally surprises me. We've seen with the Quest Rogue variant, measures taken to try to protect them from the Pirate Warrior. We've even seen Tar Creeper, Tolvir Stone Shapers, in addition to the Bilefin Tide Hunters, the Glacial Shards, specifically to deal with that kind of stuff.
I would actually warrant to say that maybe Quest Warrior is better equipped to deal with Pirate Warrior, just because the text that pretty much every Quest Rogue deck uses is against Pirate Warrior, because that's their weakest matchup. So here we can see Maki has tied up this series, and our next game is going to be Patayao on the Rogue versus Hot Meowth on the Hunter. Now, I would register to say that Hot Meowth is guessing Patayao has brought a Quest Rogue, and the Hunter is simply the more aggressive of the 2 decks between Hunter and Shaman.
Yeah, Hunter's in a spot right now in the meta where its win condition is fairly straightforward. Again, kind of like Aggro Druid, it has certain key power points it needs to hit. Most of them are just early on in the game. And the Quest Rogue gives up so many tools in dealing with aggro that Hunter actually just, if it gets that good early strong curve, it is really that deck, like I said, like Aggro Druid, that it's going to just leverage that strong early curve to just kind of run away with the game.
Absolutely can. Maybe not quite as strong as Pirate Warrior against Rogue, but it definitely gets the job done. So here we can see Pato Yao and Hot Meowth. Looks like most of the Thai team have come together for their match today, whereas Hot Meowth and the rest of the USA team are speaking to each other on voice comms. And we do know, you've spoken to Amnesiac extensively, I've talked to Hot Meowth and Firebat a little bit here and there, that their team does communicate rather frequently over the course of the week to plan out what their lineup and strategy is going to be for this week. So it looks like both teams have very successful team communication.
Yeah, and that's something coming into a unique format like the Hearthstone Global Games format that is quite possibly an underrated aspect of it, because, you know, when you're playing Hearthstone and you're not necessarily someone who's competing all the time, you can kind of like oversimplify how the experience goes. But especially in a team setting, communication is such a big deal because you have a limited window. You have 4 different individuals all kind of opining, giving their own thoughts, like this is what I think we should do. So good communication in this format is really essential to having a successful team. And, you know, again, it's easy to point at USA and say, again, good communication can lead to scores like 3-0.
Yeah, it absolutely can. Because when you are a team of 4 that can all deliberate to make the strongest play every turn, you're as strong as your strongest player, which in this case could be any of the 4 players on the team for Team USA. Thailand, very strong players as well, but maybe not as much experience in large competitive Hearthstone events. But here we're going to see it is going to be the Quest Rogue for Pato Yao and Hot Meowth on pretty much the only Hunter variant we've been seeing in competitive play. It's going to be a mid-range build that tries to hit hard in the early game and finish up the game with Kill Command and Savannah High Main.
Yeah, I mean, even in the different deck lists for Hunter, you know, we've seen some of the pro players just recently posting what they're bringing to the Europe Spring playoffs. There isn't necessarily all that much differential in terms of what they're bringing. You know, some are going for the more aggressive route with Bitter Tide Hydras. We're seeing tools like that. But yeah, in general, Hunter is pretty straightforward, at least in this current environment for the meta. So based on that, though, we do see that Hot Meowth has a pretty solid opening curve. I want to point out Firefly. That card is so powerful for so many players that even though it's not a beast, you have your choices of 1-drop beast and Firefly in here because of the consistent pressure it provides.
You can just put it in pretty much any deck that needs an early curve. So yes, Jeweled Macaw is a strong 1-drop beast that gives you additional minions in hand, but Firefly, along with Direwolf Alpha, trades so cleanly and can just give you that early game board battle that you need to win in Hunter Mirrors, against Pirate Warrior, against Aggro Druid. It's so strong in all of these decks.
Yeah, I want to point out there, Hot Meowth choosing to go ahead and coin out the Direwolf Alpha, has the Crackling Razor Maw, wants to potentially get that beast synergy, and you're playing against a deck, a rogue deck, that does not run backstab. So you can make the read of, okay, this is probably going to live unless he chooses to, you know, sacrifice like double Stone Tusk Boar or something, something with charge. Like, he has to sacrifice a lot to deal with it, and you can go ahead and fix on getting that Crackling Razor Maw buff. And out of these choices, Divine Shield and Living Spores certainly stand out to me. I don't necessarily think the taunt has too much value on the Direwolf Alpha. What do you think?
It's tough to say. They're all kind of underwhelming. Obviously here you were looking for +1/+1 or +3 attack. Divine Shield means that maybe your Direwolf gets to soak up another attack from a 5-attack minion, or you know, it's just tougher for Thailand to kill. So this makes the most sense to me. But honestly, I don't think it's what Hot Meowth really wanted to see here. You just need something to continue pushing additional pressure, so any stat buff in that case is ideal.
All right, so we are probably going to see here Gadgetzan Ferryman and then the Glacial Shard come out. So he's already started investing tools into bouncing the Novice Engineer, which is currently 2 plays. Again, you need 4 to activate the quest, but the Glacial Shard right there fits into the mana curve, but also just more importantly, does a good job of stymieing some of that pressure that's coming out.
Yeah, it also sets you up for a Tolvir Stone Shaper on turn 4 if that's what you want to do, because the Glacial Shard is an elemental. So you were mentioning Tolvir as well as Tar Creeper fitting into the Quest Rogue build, sort of trying to stop early aggression, give yourself a little bit more staying power, and it just fits in really nicely. You're already running 2 Glacial Shards, Fireflies, Igneous Elementals. You have a lot of elemental synergy. This 4-drop, though higher in curve than what you're used to running in this deck, makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, when we were kind of looking at what all the European players were posting on Twitter in terms of deck lists, I was seeing more Tar Creeper and Tolvir Stone Shaper than I expected, because when you put those in your deck, to your point, again, those are a little heavier than you're used to your minions being in your deck. You know, you're looking for those 1-mana minions, 2-mana minions. Obviously a little bit heavier, but yeah, if you make the read that you're running into aggression and you really feel that you need to deal with it, especially against Pirate Warrior, Divine Shield is super problematic. You have something with a taunt, 3/5, and Divine Shield, so it's very difficult to get through. A little bit less so for the Hunter, which has the ability to deal with Divine Shield a little bit better because the cheap minions unleash the hounds, but it's still extremely powerful against aggressive decks.
Yeah, it's actually rather rare that the Pirate Warrior has exact damage that it needs to deal with a taunt minion. It's very likely that they will be forced to overkill that minion in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, Spellbreaker also certainly a consideration for dealing with Tolvir Stone Shaper, but again, the Hunter here going pretty wide on the board now. This is a situation where, against other rogue decks, maybe a Fan of Knives is kind of the start of the way you deal with this board, but again, Quest Rogue largely ignores the board for the most part. When it does interact with it, it's basically playing minions with taunt, to just saying like, hey, kind of leave me alone. If backed into a corner, it may use the Stone Tusk board to actually get rid of one of those minions, but yeah, that's not what the Quest Rogue wants to do, and Hot Me Out certainly hoping to avoid Vanish. Vanish here would be extremely punishing. Gets the good news that it's just Tolvir Stone Shaper, which there were certainly worse things like Vanish that it could be.
Yeah, Prep Vanish would have been exactly what Patuya would have needed to shut down Hot Meowth's board and buy himself even more time. In this case, Tolvir Stone Shaper is annoying to get over, but certainly not impossible. And actually, with the Scavenging Hyena in hand for Hot Meowth, he could put together a really large threat on this board if he wants to. It's a bit awkward with the other cards in his hand to fill out the curve this turn, but it is an option.
I was going to say, Animal Companion represents a lot of upside if you knew it was going to be Leok. But in this situation, taking that and then threading in a hero power, to your point again, you're kind of being like, make my monster grow, and then it just gets really big. And again, there's going to be no answer for that Hyena probably, so you feel pretty safe about just investing into it, and it's going to be a consistent source of damage unless Vanish bounces it.
And it is important to note that though the Tolvir did stop some of the damage from Hot Meowth, it did not advance Thailand towards their goal of completing the quest at all. So that is a turn of delay for Thailand, but they have not accomplished their goal. That Novice Engineer pickup, however, is going to put them over the edge and mean that the Crystal Core will be playable on the following turn.
That's a big difference, though. We see double prep in Patoya's hand. Again, it doesn't matter, though, because he's only going to have 1 mana after playing the Novice Engineer. So if he plays them both right now, he can go ahead and get the quest. But he's leaving these minions as 1/1s, which play pretty well into Unleash the Hound, just getting rid of them, potentially. And that is a big problem, because playtime's over. The Hyena's pretty big now. It's going to keep going. And if the Hounds are able to both take your minions off the board that you were going to use the Crystal Core to activate, and the Hyena gets bigger.
Yeah. Okay, so let's run this by. Bounce the Novice back. Then next turn, you play Novice. You prep Crystal Core. Then you run the Stone Tusk board into the Hyena. Hyena's dead. You've got minions.
Wow.
I'm seeing some lines, Rob.
I was going to say, it's like the Matrix right here. Like, you're seeing all the lines turn into the numbers. But
the spoon, it doesn't exist.
Yeah. But that Houndmaster does. Want to say that is potentially a very, very large Hyena. Hot Meowth definitely considering it, talking it over with the rest of the guys, but I mean, that right there would be a 10-7, and does that ever actually get removed? I mean, charge minions, I guess, with Crystal Core, but you're still asking for a lot of resources to get it off the board, and if unchecked, I mean, it's just going to kill you over 2 turns.
Plus, you're hitting face for 10 this turn. You've got Houndmaster, which is very likely to live once your opponent is forced to kill this Hyena. And then it's very likely that you're just going to be able to piece together 14 damage over the next 2 turns or so.
All right, well, Thailand's got to make something happen now. He does get the discounted Crystal Core, which is a big deal. Going to be able to start putting a lot of minions on the board, but
will it be enough?
The Hyena will go down. See the Firefly come out, so okay, 2 5/5s. And now Hot Meowth has seen the board kind of change against him. Now, and he's going to have to pretty much just commit to going all in on the aggression. Really wants to see Huffer here. Misha, not what he wants to see. Frankly, well, I don't know if it's the worst thing necessarily compared to Leok, but really wanted to see Huffer there.
Would 1 additional damage from Leok have been better than reducing 5 damage to face, potentially? Tough to say, but Huffer was by far and away the best choice there.
Now, Unleash is pretty good to have in hand because
Yes.
if Thailand goes wide, and that's probably what's going to happen long-term here, is just put 5/5s on the board. You have that hero power, which is a guaranteed 2 damage. If 6 minions go on the board, Unleash the Hounds and you win the game.
Yeah, and especially since Thailand is forced to clear everything that the US puts on the board going forward. So they're forced to go wide. They're forced to clear these minions, which means they're not going to be able to deal enough damage in time to close out this game before Hot Meowth simply is able to hero power his way to victory or draw one of the 2 kill commands in deck. Finding additional resources, but a little bit too heavy to make use of now that both preparations are gone for Thailand.
Yeah, the Vanish really coming way later than it needed to be coming. Obviously, you want to usually use Vanish to bounce minions, to get to that 4 total, or just to alleviate some pressure, but that hero power makes the Vanish much less attractive, especially when you're the one dominating the board with what are basically non-charge minions.
Yeah. So if this board comes down, then that would be lethal for Hot Meowth with Unleash the Hounds and the hero power, but it does not. So that's going to be a total of 7 damage. You go for it. You set up the 2-turn lethal.
Yeah, I think you probably clear...
You need to clear something, otherwise you're very likely dead.
Okay, yep. Yeah, good read by Thailand, though, to realize like what would actually kill them, and it was that Unleash the Hounds. So, really heads-up play from Thailand, and Vanish is going to allow them to close out the game.
Yep, that was very close. It looked like the US had everything they needed, but holding back that 1 minion for Patoyao and still having that 1 charge in the form of the Stone Tusk Boar means that they are going to have just enough damage to be able to close that one out. Talk about a close game, but Thailand is going to take a 2-1 lead in this series. I mean, it looked like it was going USA's way all the way up until that very last turn. Holding back that Stone Tusk Boar is what won Thailand the game.
Yeah, and it seems like a little thing, especially if you're someone out there watching who's routinely hitting Legend. You know, you're competing in open cups. You're out there trying to be a pro player, but those kinds of plays are what really distinguish people, right? In those moments, it's those very small things that, you know, again, play the Stone Tusk Boar and you die. Hold it, you live and win.
Well, especially since Thailand was at 8, so a Beast plus Kill Command in hand, along with Hero Power, wouldn't have been enough damage. It was quite literally Hounds plus Kill Command, or Hounds Hero Power. So by playing around that, they put themselves in the position that they needed to win, and were able to take it. So that was some very good navigation on Thailand's part. Now they're going to go up to a 2-1 lead over the US. If Viper Pro can seal this Paladin mirror against Firebat, that would be the US's first loss in this tournament, Rob.
Yeah, Thailand definitely has the United States on the back foot. But again, I want to point out for those of you watching at home, the United States have already qualified to move on to stage 2 with that 3-0 score. So at this point, it's a matter of seedings and pride. And don't get me wrong, the United States guys
have a lot of pride.
Are extremely proud and extremely competitive. In fact, I would say Amnesiac, Dog, Firebat, Hot Meowth, some of the most competitive players I know in all of Hearthstone. So they really want to get that win. For Thailand, you know, the hope's starting to shine through. Like, okay, we can win the series, we can go up 2-1. And then suddenly, you know, things look a little bit different for us in terms of getting out of the group.
Yeah, it absolutely does. The U.S. obviously going up to a 4-0 record in the Hearthstone Global Games would be something to be very proud about. It would be a huge accomplishment. But if you're looking at in terms of making it out of groups, Thailand definitely needs this win more. I don't think that's going to affect the U.S.'s play at all, but it does put this matchup into a little bit of perspective, I would have to say. So here we can see Viper Pro and, of course, everybody's favorite, Firebat, 2014 Hearthstone World Champion.
Yeah, I mean, Firebat's story in competitive Hearthstone is, you know, he literally just one of the most storied guys. 2014 Hearthstone champion. He's hung around. You know, he's continued to play in tournaments. He's grinded to the very heights of ladder. He's put together tournaments for the rest of the community. He's put out community resources. He's really one of those grandfathers of competitive Hearthstone that, you know, people think like, oh, Hearthstone's been around forever. It really hasn't. but in like 5 or 10 years, like we're going to be looking back and Firebat's going to be one of those people who had such a hand in shaping at least the North American Hearthstone competitive community.
I mean, I still remember, fresh-faced Firebat when he wasn't on a team. This was before he was picked up by Archon, when he was going into the Hearthstone World Championships, and people didn't really know who he was. He was definitely an underdog going into that tournament, and now you would look at Firebat, you would never think that this guy was in Thailand's position right now in this tournament. He was the underdog. He was the guy that nobody thought could take it because he's been in such a dominant position in the Hearthstone scene for so many years now.
Yeah, well said. I completely agree with what you just brought up about Firebat. Now, looking at these mulligans, Paladin right now has a wide range in terms of how you can play it, and realistically, it's how you commit to the early game. How many Murlocs are you running? And we see there, Vilefin Inquisitor and a Rockpool Hunter is frankly just an excellent start.
It's the 1-2 punch.
Yeah, in basically any deck you're going up against. Rockpool Hunter is a card that, is just nuts to me. It is so incredibly powerful if you get the Tidecaller out, if you get the Inquisitor. Honestly, Tidecaller may, in a vacuum, be the more powerful card on board than Vilefin Inquisitor, but just having that turn 2, 2/4, that is a Murloc that can receive Murloc synergies after the Rockpool Hunter buffs it is just incredibly powerful. And Viper Pro, seeing that Rockpool Hunter, we have to assume he's also going to be looking for those early Murlocs.
Yeah, absolutely will be. It does look like both of these decks are going to be scaling rather high, as the even aggressive Murloc Paladin builds usually do. You're going to see Curator, likely a Stampede and Kodo, as well as Tyrion Fordring up at the top end. But to your point, the Vilefin Inquisitor, I would say, is a better trade tool against other aggressive decks on turn 1 over the 1-mana 1/2 Murloc, that although it's stronger when buffed by the Rockpool Hunter, the Vilefin, obviously it gets that Murloc hero power online, and it's just a little bit stronger as a trading tool, which you need in the early game in these aggressive battles.
Yeah, sometimes when you see Paladin mirrors, it just really comes down to, okay, who had the better early game, because that can just allow the Paladins to steamroll so hard, especially if the opposing Paladin doesn't necessarily have the Wild Pyromancer equality, or even sometimes the Equality Consecration can get you there. But both of these guys have the early game tools. What Firebat has that's really kind of important right now is initiative. He's the one going first, and he's dictating things right now. So even though Viper Pro also has the Inquisitor, also has the Rockpool Hunter, he's not really in the driver's seat at this very early portion of the game.
Yeah, that's a great point. If you are on the back foot and you do have Equality Consecration to get back on the board, then maybe this isn't so bad of a position to be in. But I'm curious, Rob, have you been seeing these aggressive start Murloc Paladin decks running Equalities? Because in my experience, it's been 1 or 2 copies of Consecration, usually no Equality.
I have been seeing more one-off of Equality just in the last week and a half that I've been playing a fair bit, but it's one of those things where, to my point earlier, it's definitely far from settled. Tidecaller off the top there is just continuing to put out the Murloc pressure, but Firebat is straying into the area where a coin Consecration is potentially very brutal in terms of equalizing the board. And we do see Viper Pro has that option. Problem is he's not developing a threat if he does that. So maybe something where he chooses to just go ahead and hold on to the coin and maybe use it for something like a Spike Ridge Steed or potentially Tyrion Fordring.
I mean, I think this is just too good to pass up. If Firebat had something to develop on turn 4, then he would still have the initiative, but that's going to be a whiff for Firebat. Needs to find something to develop going forward. And with the Stonehill Defender in Viper Pro's hand, I'm going to go ahead and guess that this is a bit of a heavier version of Murloc Paladin than some of the hyper-aggressive versions we've been seeing.
Yeah, Firebat has the old vanilla Paladin hand where pretty much everything on it says 4 mana.
Yeah.
That was kind of the way it was.
Got a lot of those cards.
Back in the day before Shielded Minibot Muster and all those glorious mid-range Paladin tools kind of came to light. Obviously, you and I have both been playing a fair bit of WoW lately, so we've had the chance to kind of relive the glory days. But yeah, to your
Muster
point,
on 3 is so fun, Rob.
the perfect curve. Paladin, unfortunately for Firebat, not really delivering thus far. The Consecration, no doubt those are powerful in the right circumstance, but what he wants to be doing is continuing to snowball the threat, and both players had the really strong early game, but Viper Pro, we see, has that really amazing late game curve, where he goes Steed into Curator into Tyrion, and there are a lot of situations where you maybe want to hold the Tyrion for later in the game when playing different decks, but against this deck, Tyrion on 8 just feels really good.
It is very difficult for the Paladin to kill their opponent's Tyrion if they don't have a strong board presence. So if you're playing Tyrion when your opponent doesn't have much on board, yeah, it's pretty good.
All right, Stonehill Defender off of Stonehill Defender, so gonna get another chance to roll for something a little bit better. Paladin has a plethora of amazing options when it comes to Stonehill Defender. You, probably more so than any one class, have realistically just a ton of different things you can do.
Yeah, Paladin and Shaman, I would have to say, are able to make very good use of Stonehill Defender. The real strength of this Paladin deck is that early aggressive Murloc curve scaling so well into these strong late game minions. If you are just playing Control Paladin, you don't have access to the early aggression, and maybe you just get tempoed out by other early and mid-range decks, and you still have that control late game. So this deck kind of is the best of both worlds in a sense of the hyper-aggressive and hyper-control Paladin lists. So it's really at its strongest when it's able to curve out so very well, which is what Viper Pro and Thailand are doing right now, whereas Firebat has had a bit of a slip-up, and he's falling into one of the big issues of the deck, which is late game early and then draw those synergistic Murlocs when you don't need them.
Yeah, it's a real problem in this situation, and you know, we say Firebat has kind of like gone into a little bit of a slip up, but this is realistically one of those matchups where generally the outcome is either steamroll or it's just everybody goes blow for blow. And Firebat right now is pushing some damage. He kind of understands that's the option that he has available to him. Maybe on 8 mana he would have double Consecration just to get rid of Finja. But he pretty much this is a situation that I think really defines great Hearthstone players, is looking at bad situations and kind of realizing, okay, what is the most constructive thing I can be doing, even though this is far from ideal. And yeah, Spike Ridge Siege, in case you didn't know, one man itself, it cannot done.
Rob, I had no idea.
Ooh.
Oh,
This is going bad
That's
for
rough.
Firebat suddenly now. Okay, Gentle Megasaur in the hand. I was gonna say maybe Poisonous can kind of help you get the board back, but that is not the case. And gosh, if this was an 8-mana turn again, this turn would actually be pretty juicy, all things considered. But this is about the most juiceless turn I've ever seen in my life.
No juice here.
No juice here. All right, there's the Poisonous. So we'll be able to deal with the Finja. That's good. We'll be able to get through most of, all the Stegodon left behind because of the Poisonous effect, but Firebat kind of crossing his arms like, show me what you got. And it's pretty reasonable.
Well, it's okay. It is looking like Thailand will have to sacrifice one of these war leaders. And obviously you don't want to leave Firebat with any Poisonous minions on the board. It's actually a bit awkward for Viper Pro. What exactly does he want to do? You can choose to trade off both of your war leaders and just put the Curator down to directly challenge the Megasaur and try to refill your hand even further and try to win just the value game because you simply have more cards than your opponent. But are you really willing to part ways with these war leaders so easily? That's what I'm wondering.
I think, okay, so obviously we have the luxury of seeing both hands. So I guess when I was saying earlier that the situation was pretty juiceless for Firebat, I do want to point out it's just because A, hand size, so that much Firebat can see. He can obviously see the number of cards, so even though he doesn't know exactly what's in it, he can kind of probably make some assumptions in terms of there being late game threats. This is an awkward situation for Viper Pro, but I would still say that Viper Pro is in a pretty fortuitous spot.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Curator can pick up some additional resources for Firebat, but those 2 Consecrations have just been sitting dead for the entirety of this game. And there's a Tyrion. Oh dear.
There's going to be a lot of faith put in the light in the coming turns.
Looks like Thailand just made a bit of an error. I think they wanted to trade the War Leader into the Megasaur, but after the first War Leader was killed off by the Poisonous minion, the second War Leader lost the buff and only had 3 attack then. So that Megasaur is going to stick around.
Yeah, we saw Firebat have a very emotive expression towards the little bit of missequencing there. Okay, so suddenly, with that Curator now, Firebat has drawn some gas there, and things are looking a little bit better. So both players, really both teams, kind of have the high-power hands now in terms of what they actually have. It's going to be very interesting to see how the sequences out.
Well, the Megasaur getting to push 5 damage is
yeah,
that's huge here. And if I do remember correctly, I think that Firebat's Poisonous Murloc was at 5/3. So I think that if Thailand had sequenced it correctly, they could have killed off both the Megasaur and the Murloc on Firebat's side of the board. Now Firebat's just applying so much pressure, and you have the Almighty Equalizer and Sunkeeper Tarim in hand. I think he's found some juice, Rob.
I would say that, he's gone up to wherever the drinks are sold, and he's like, hey.
He went to the Jamba.
Yeah.
Bought some juice.
The Orange Julius.
Ooh.
He's like, yo.
Classy.
Give me some juice. Yeah, and as I pointed out, both players have a lot of tools in hand, but yeah, the one thing that Firebat kind of has here, now that he had at the very beginning of this game, that's all important in this matchup is initiative. He's the one calling the shots right now. We saw Thailand kind of do what you do when you have Tyrion sometimes on 8 and you don't have a better situation. You're like, well, this is a really powerful card. Hopefully the rest of what's in Firebat's hand is pretty much just whiffs. But he's going to get the bad news that it's not whiffs, as we finally see the fabled double consecration turn that has been, at least available in hand, not with mana, for Firebat. And yeah, this is suddenly a really bad situation for Viper Bro. He is staring down lethal damage on board.
Is there anything that he can do to stop it? He can Aldor the Curator and Tarim. You could play out the second Tyrion. You have defensive options, but just imagine how differently this game would have gone if that Megasaur hadn't been able to push 5 damage and then get a kill on that Tyrion. The Curator would be dead. You would be at 10 life instead of 5.
Yeah.
That's a big deal.
I mean, as much as we praise him for the play in the Quest Rogue matchup, you certainly have to point out that if they had done this differently with the trade you were discussing and not missequence that, then things are looking a lot different for them right now, and it may end up being that it cost them this particular game.
Yeah, I mean, that is if Firebat's Murloc was at 3 health, which I believe it was. If it wasn't at 3 health, then that's a moot point, and nothing would have changed. But if Thailand was able to make both of those trades, get the Megasaur and the buffed Murloc off the board, then this would be looking very different.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, again, regardless of how that would have turned out based on the math you're describing, it's still clear that that was not the way Thailand wanted that to go. So that is certainly a big consideration. Now, Viper Pro and Thailand going to go ahead and put out the Alder Peacekeeper, reduce damage, create a big taunt, to the point you were making earlier. Equality is anything but a staple in this deck. Sunkeeper Tarim suddenly looking pretty solid in terms of reducing that giant Alder Peacekeeper to a lowly 3/3.
Yeah, I think you're okay with that.
Yeah.
Yes, you're reducing your own minions' health, but you can follow up with the Blessing of Kings to actually kill off the Stegodon that comes out of the Aldor Peacekeeper. Yeah, it's pretty good.
Yeah, it's not quite lethal, but again, you're setting Thailand on check. You are presenting the big board and saying, all right, you have to do something crazy to make this work.
Okay, second Aldor picked up.
Now, second Tyrion is pretty big. From what you can see on board, you do survive with second Tyrion. You can also play the Hydrologist. You can play the Murloc Hero Power, but you're once again just back to the wall suddenly in survival mode.
So is Tyrion the right choice, or is Aldor plus Curator a better option? Maybe Curator picks you up Primordial Drake. That would give you even more taunts in hand. And with 2 copies of Aldor Peacekeeper in the deck for Viper Pro, along with Stonehills, there might actually be a copy of Equality in this deck. It looks like it's a bit more of a control game plan, maybe than Firebat's list.
Yeah, it would be huge if Equality was in there. Maybe not at this point, but overall, when you're dealing with decks that populate the board very widely.
It's advantageous to have it.
Yep.
And even still here, it would be okay.
All right, so we're going to see the Kodo, Primordial Drake, and the Rockpool Hunter, so he does get some good resources. Spike Ridge Steed does not do it.
No, but it does mean that Firebat can kill the Curator.
Yeah,
and
just
leave
present a
big
giant
body on board.
taunt. And
yeah.
Again, unless there's some Equality heroics, you're facing down something that is really bad. Repentance now definitely jumps out to me as being a worthwhile tool there to potentially deal with something like a Primordial Drake. Second Tyrion, you haven't seen what came off that Stonehill Defender. Yeah.
All 3 of these are actually not bad. Even Eye for an Eye would have been an okay option. Redemption possibly brings back your Tarim as a 3/1. Noble Sack just prevents an attack from your opponent. There's advantages to all of these.
Now goes ahead and takes the Redemption, going to apply Spike Ridge Steed to Sunkeeper Tarim. It is now, before the trade, a 13 health minion, so It's pretty big. It's got a lot of juice.
Sure does, Rob.
Yeah, so as if this situation wasn't dire enough, now Thailand forced to play around whatever the secret could be. But I think in the grand scheme of things, that is the least threatening thing about the turn.
He has 3 minions on board and a secret.
Oh, gosh, as if the minion pressure wasn't enough. Some people.
Man, just gotta rub it in. No, and again, I have to say, I really wonder if this game would have gone differently had Viper Pro been able to kill off that Megasaur. But
yeah, make no
shoulda,
mistake.
coulda, woulda.
If USA does win the ace match and go ahead and just take the series, that will certainly be a talking point for Thailand. But I don't necessarily want to harp on it too much because we don't have the ability to watch that turn in
We don't
front of
have
us.
rewind, unfortunately.
This
Caster
isn't-
vision only extends so far.
If you've been wondering about the limitations of caster vision, that's
We don't
limitation
have TiVo in our brains.
All right, so big taunt coming down in the form of the Primordial Drake.
I always think that
Megasaur.
Hungry Crab itself is a Murloc, but it's not.
It's a hungry
Fun
crab
fact.
Cora, not a hungry Murloc.
Well, you could have fooled me.
I thought you had a degree.
I do have.
Oh, educated too. All right, so another big board for Firebat, just continuing to say, okay, I'm going to make you handle this every single turn. No equality there. Wicker Flame does provide a taunt that realistically takes 2 sources of damage to get through, is going to potentially heal. Stampeding Kodo, you could hope to hit the 2-6, but what are you using to block out the 4-8? Is it just going to be Wicker Flame?
I mean, here's the thing, though. This is pretty much Firebat's last stand, right? If Viper Pro is able to take down Firebat's board and establish his own, he has the greater amount of resources here. Maybe you stabilize at a very low amount of health.
Sure.
I mean, maybe.
I mean, you have
It's
Tyrion
just
to
good
hide.
enough.
You have Tyrion to hide behind. You've seen both consecrations in terms of what could be